Chapter 1057. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but laugh. The people around them were originally quietly listening to the women in the corner, but Chu Liyue's laughter immediately broke the silence. Lin Tianfeng and the others looked over strangely. The commotion here also attracted the attention of the women who were chatting happily not far away. They quickly stopped and looked over nervously. It was fine for them to talk like this in private, but if someone with ulterior motives overheard, when they saw Hu Yang standing at the front, the women's faces turned slightly pale, but they secretly heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. This was because Hu Yang wasn't directly responsible for looking after them. They quickly calmed down, looked at each other, and walked over. "Greetings, Lord Hu." The three women bowed in unison. They were all beautiful, slender, and dainty. Their movements were very graceful and dignified. It was obvious that they had learned the relevant etiquette before, and it was impossible to find fault with them. Hu Yang nodded and pointed to Lin Tianfeng. "This is clan leader Lin of Heavenly Cave Cliff." Heavenly Cave Cliff. The women showed a look of understanding, then smiled and bowed. "Greetings, clan leader Lin. I've heard of your name for a long time, and seeing you today, I can see that you live up to your reputation." These words were said very politely, and also very flattering. It would be better if they could cover up the contempt and disdain in their eyes. Lin Tianfeng was able to keep his composure and didn't argue with them. His expression was calm, and he didn't reveal anything. "Ladies, you're too polite. If I'm selected this time, I'll be the one to bow to you in the future." The expressions of the women on the other side changed instantly. Wasn't he clearly mocking them? But considering the other party's identity and the fact that Hu Yang and the others were standing around, they didn't want to make things too ugly, so they swallowed their anger and forced a smile. "Not at all. I'm just a lowly person, how could I dare to have such extravagant hopes?" Lin Qifei suddenly coughed. Hearing this, Lin Tianfeng immediately turned around and asked worriedly, "Qifei, are you feeling unwell?" Hu Yang said. "Fourth young master Lin, this way please." As he spoke, he led his men all the way to the side hall. Chu Liyue was about to follow, but was suddenly stopped by those women. "Miss, please wait." Chu Liyue stopped in her tracks and looked back. "Is something the matter?" A beautiful woman in a lotus-colored dress smiled slightly, but there was no smile in her eyes. "May I ask, what were you laughing at just now?" Chu Liyue also laughed. "It's nothing. I just thought of something and chuckled." "What's wrong? Could it be that the few of you have something against this?" The woman sneered and took a few steps forward, approaching Chu Liyue. The three women who had originally planned to follow Lin Tianfeng and the others hurriedly stepped forward and stood beside Chu Liyue. "What are you trying to do?" "We don't want to do anything. It's just that this lady seemed to be mocking us just now. We just want to clarify things." The woman in the lotus-colored dress stared at Chu Liyue with a mocking gaze. Chu Liyue gave the others a reassuring look and smiled faintly. "I'm not mocking you, but I think what you said makes a lot of sense. No matter who you are, as long as you're chosen, you'll have a meteoric rise. Besides, Rong, His Highness the Son of Saint is indeed enchanting, noble, and graceful." She suddenly paused. "His Highness the Son of Saint is indeed what?" The women opposite her asked anxiously. "His Highness the Son of Saint is indeed the dream man of many women." Chu Liyue smiled and said word by word. "Humph, do I need you to tell me that? But someone like you won't have a chance." The woman in the lotus-colored dress impudently sized up Chu Liyue. The mocking expression on her face was enough to explain everything. "Hey! Show some respect. Miss Dugu is an 8th grade celestial physician. She's also an honored guest of Heavenly Cave Cliff." The women beside Chu Liyue couldn't help but retort. Only then did the women opposite her realize that this ordinary-looking woman in front of them didn't seem to be participating in the consort selection hall this time. There was a little boy standing next to her. Just as the two sides were about to continue arguing, Chu Luiyue said, "Forget it, let's go back first." She wasn't interested in wasting time here with these people. However, her words were a sign of weakness in the eyes of the other party. After they turned and left, the women didn't lower their voices and were still full of mockery. "At least she knows her place. I'm afraid no man will take a second look at her if she goes out like this. It's useless even if she's beautiful. Heavenly Cave Cliff. Pfft. I thought they'd tactfully give up. Who knew that they'd be so thick-skinned and come? What a pity. If we came a little earlier and changed our residence, we wouldn't have to squeeze in with them. Forget it, there's nothing to say to these people. Let's go back and prepare first. The birthday banquet is about to begin. Those people from Cold Mountain Valley are too much." A woman finally couldn't help but whisper. "They're clearly not much stronger than us. What right do they have to be so arrogant?" Chu Luiyue smiled indifferently. "If they want to make a scene, let them. We just have to do our own thing." "Miss Dugu, aren't you angry?" another woman asked curiously. They said that about you." Chu Luiyue touched her face and nodded thoughtfully. "Actually, what they said isn't without reason. This face is indeed not qualified to participate in the consort selection hall." The women looked at each other speechlessly. Dugu really didn't seem to care about this at all. Chu Luiyue walked into the room, took Lin Qifei's pulse, and handed over a pill. "This is the last one. I'll continue to refine it when I have time. You should be able to recover more than half in a month or so. It's just that fourth young master's body has been burdened by illness for many years. He needs to rest well for about a year or so before he can fully recover." Lin Qifei nodded lightly. "Thank you. Master Lin, the people from Cold Mountain Valley have already taken the main hall. I'll have to trouble you to stay in this side hall for the time being." Hu Yang sighed and said. Lin Tianfeng wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he didn't flare up and only nodded. At this moment, a series of familiar footsteps suddenly came from outside. Chu Luiyue seemed to sense something and looked back. A figure appeared at the door. It was Yan Qing. Hu Yang was shocked. He hurried forward and asked respectfully, "Lord Yan Qing, why are you here?" Yan Qing was in a hurry. Her eyes quickly searched the room. When she saw Chu Luiyue, her heart skipped a beat. Chu Luiyue smiled, her red lips slightly opened. "Lord Yan Qing." Chapter 1058. Yan Qing hurriedly walked to Chu Luiyue and was about to speak when the girl suddenly stepped forward. "Greetings, Lord Yan Qing. I am Dugu," said Chu Luiyue with a smile and bowed at the same time. Yan Qing's legs turned to jelly, and he almost knelt on the ground. "You," he spoke in a trembling voice, but before he could say anything, he saw Chu Luiyue's bright black eyes. That pair of star-like eyes were glowing with a clear and bright light. Yan Qing choked, and the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. He complained incessantly in his heart. His Highness was supposed to come, but he was stopped by Jiang Jiwan. Hearing that it had something to do with the academy, His Highness temporarily stayed behind and let him come first. Yan Qing had already expected that Chu Luiyue would not be in a good mood after knowing these things. She might be angry, or reprimanded, but he did not expect that she would not even want to admit her identity. But this was even scarier than those reactions. Yan Qing regretted it for a moment. He should have waited to come with His Highness. Why did he have to become cannon fodder now? Only then did the surrounding people realize that the atmosphere between the two was very unusual. Hu Yang's eyes darted back and forth between the two of them, and he asked tentatively. Lord Yanqing, are you acquainted with Miss Dugu? Yanqing swallowed his saliva with difficulty. His throat was tight. Yes. Yes, I have met Lord Yanqing a few times before, but at that time, I did not know Lord Yanqing's identity. Only today did I know that Lord Yanqing's identity is so impressive. Chu Luiyue responded smoothly, and the smile on her face did not diminish at all. She looked very relaxed. However, in the ears of the people around them, these words were no different from a clap of thunder. Dugu actually knows Yanqing. He was the closest confidant of His Highness the Saint. Such a status was enough to kill 90% of the people in Yuntian Tower. Yanqing's eyes twitched. Every word that came out of Chu Liuyue's mouth was like roasting him on a rack. Lin Tianfeng looked on in amazement from the side. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind. Wait a minute. Dugu was an outsider, so she shouldn't have been to the Divine Ruins world before. In that case, did the two of them know each other outside the Divine Ruins realm? Looking at the reactions of the two people, especially the expression of this Yanqing, how could it be that they had only met a few times? Could it be, Lin Tianfeng had a bold and absurd conjecture. This idea was so absurd that just thinking about it made his heart beat uncontrollably. He almost subconsciously looked at Lin Qifei, only to see that Lin Qifei was also observing the two people thoughtfully. The surrounding people made Yanqing feel uneasy. He swallowed hard. Miss Dugu, may I have a word with you? The already quiet room became even more silent. Who was Yanqing? With his status, how could he speak so politely to a woman? In fact, this was no longer just politeness. It was almost like he was begging. Everyone present was shocked. Only the person in question, Chu Luiyue, didn't look surprised at all. In fact, the smile on his face deepened. Sure. Yanqing took a deep breath and stretched out his hand. This way please. After Yanqing and Chu Luiyue left, the remaining people fell into a long silence. After an unknown period of time, Hu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Lin Tianfeng in disbelief and said anxiously, Patriarch Lin, Miss Dugu knows Lord Yanqing. Why didn't you say so earlier? Lin Tianfeng said innocently. I didn't know. How long had they known Dugu? How could they know everything? Right now, he was also filled with shock, all right. Oh my God, Lord Yanqing. Is he the Yanqing by His Highness the Holy Sun's side? A woman beside him widened her eyes and asked cautiously. Hu Yang sighed. Other than him, who else could it be? The young ladies looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with shock. I heard that Lord Yanqing is one of His Highness the Holy Sun's most trusted confidants. He also has a high status in the Yuntian Tower. I didn't expect Miss Dugu to know him. From what they said, it seems like they met outside the world of God. I didn't expect Miss Dugu to have such a relationship. They seem to be very close. Anyone with eyes could see that Yanqing's attitude in front of Dugu was very different. Hu Yang came back to his senses. He couldn't hide the excitement on his face. This Miss Dugu is too much. She should have said so earlier. With this relationship, their situation in the Yuntian Tower would be much better than before. Another woman said weakly. Didn't she say that she didn't know Lord Yanqing's identity and only found out after coming here? She probably didn't expect this to happen, right? However, Hu Yang laughed out loud. Actually, that's not important. Miss Dugu knows Lord Yanqing. Who knows how much more convenient it will be for all of you in the future. Lord Yanqing has always been a cold-hearted person. He is only loyal to His Highness the Holy Sun. He doesn't care about most of the others. To be able to establish a relationship with him, TSK. He smiled at Lin Tianfeng and said, Lin Tianfeng, Lin Tianfeng. Master Lin, many of the clans have tried to establish a good relationship with Lord Yanqing, but to no avail. You guys are much better than them. The Lin family of Cave Heaven Cliff had always been the weakest among the clans. Who would have thought that they would be so lucky? Lin Tianfeng laughed and then looked at Lin Qifei. Could it be that? That guess was true. Yanqing is guilty. Please punish me, Miss Lu Liyue. Chapter 1059. Rumor had it that Lord Yanqing was a knife in the hands of the saint. With a cold face and a cold heart, he was decisive in killing. Even if he had killed thousands of people and fought on the battlefield, he would still be cold and cruel. But today, he knew how to write the word scared for the first time. Chu Liyue was smiling, but Yanqing felt a chill down his spine. He felt that he had said something wrong. And it was not just a little wrong, but a big mistake. He struggled to say, no, His Highness has something important to discuss with that person. It's not about anything else, oh. Chu Liyue nodded. It seems that it's really something important. But it doesn't matter if he doesn't come. The consort selection hall is just around the corner. He must be very busy. Yanqing felt that it was useless to keep struggling. He closed his eyes in despair. Ms. Liyue, take it that I'm begging you. Please follow me up first. His Highness will be worried if he doesn't see you later. I'm an outsider. Now I can come to the Yuntian Tower because of my relationship with the Lin family of Dongtian Cliff. Naturally, I have to go with them. How can I just leave like this? Chu Liyue refused without thinking. She didn't have to come because he didn't want to, but she had to go because he wanted her to. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Besides, why can't I see him? In 4 hours, the birthday banquet will start. Won't we see him then? But, it's really inconvenient for you to stay here. Yanqing wanted to persuade her again, but when he looked up and saw Chu Liyue's faint smile, he swallowed the rest of his words and changed the topic. Then I'll listen to you. If there's anything, just let me know. Chu Liyue waved his hand. Okay, since you've said it out loud, I'll see what I can do. Let's go. Although Chu Liyue urged her to leave, Yanqing still respectfully sent her back to her previous place. When the two of them arrived at the door of the room, everyone in the room heard the commotion and looked over. Then. I'll leave first. After Yanqing finished speaking and saw Chu Liyue nod, she turned around and left. After taking a step forward, he turned back to look at Hu Yang. You must take good care of Miss Dugu and the others. Hu Yang hurriedly said, I understand. Rest assured, Madam Yanqing. Yanqing nodded. Because he failed to invite Chu Liyue up, he left with a heavy heart. On the other hand, Chu Liyue's expression remained the same. He walked straight to a nearby chair and sat down as if nothing had happened. This contrast was even more shocking to the crowd. Miss Dugu, are you satisfied with this place? Hu Yang carefully asked. In truth, he had been very polite to Lin Tianfeng and the others, but now, he was even more respectful to Chu Liyue. Ruhai is just a little hot-tempered. He doesn't mean to target you, so don't mind him. Even if he did have some thoughts before, now that he knew that Dugu was acquainted with Lord Yanqing, he should have dismissed them. Chu Liyue's eyes curved into crescents. Thank you for your concern, Elder Lin Mo. I know all of this. Soon, only Lin Tianfeng and his son, Chu Liyue, and Dabeo were left in the room. Lin Tianfeng looked at Chu Liyue with a complicated gaze, as if he wanted to say something, but stopped. Patriarch Lin, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Chu Liyue said directly. Lin Tianfeng paused. Miss Dugu, I don't mean to offend you, but I feel that this matter is really strange. You and that Lord Yen Qing. Speaking of this, he glanced at Debeo, who had been so quiet that it was as if he didn't exist, and a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. Patriarch Lin, if you have something to say, then just say it. If I can listen, so can Debeo. Hearing her words, Lin Tianfeng gritted his teeth. Actually, what I want to ask is Lord Yen Qing the person Miss Dugu mentioned before? That is. Debeo's birth, crack. Debeo split the table next to him in half. After he left, the room calmed down again. Chu Luiyue then let go of Dugu Mobao. Dugu Mobao was no longer angry. He still had a cold expression on his face, but he didn't make a move in the end. Miss Dugu, please forgive my father for offending you just now, Lin Qifei said. Chu Luiyue waved his hand. It's nothing. Master Lin is also concerned about helping me. I understand. It's just that Master Yen Qing and I. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but smile bitterly. She never thought that things would develop in such a way. Fourth young master, you don't think so too, do you? Lin Qifei shook his head. I believe Miss Dugu's words. He is not the person you're looking for. Chu Luiyue looked at him with some surprise. Oh. Fourth young master, why are you so sure? Thinking back to what happened just now, it seemed that it was easy to misunderstand. But Lin Qifei's tone seemed to be very certain. Lin Qifei smiled faintly. Intuition. The atmosphere between the two of them was indeed unusual. It wasn't an ordinary friendship that they had met a few times, but it was definitely not what Lin Tianfeng had guessed. The main reason why he was so sure was actually because of her. When she saw Master Yen Qing, her eyes didn't shine brightly. It was completely different from the way she looked when she mentioned that person that day. So, the person she was looking for was definitely someone else. Chu Liuyue's red lips curled slightly. Lin Qifei was much smarter and sharper than Lin Tianfeng. Actually, if Miss Dugu really wants to find that person, why don't you just ask Master Yen Qing for help? His status in the Yuntian Tower is not low. If he agrees to help, it should save a lot of effort. Lin Qifei didn't intend to ask about the matter between Chu Luiyue and Yen Qing, so he went back to the topic. Chu Luiyue rested her chin on one hand, looking thoughtful. After a moment, she laughed. That's not necessary. His Highness the Son of God's banquet is about to start. Everyone should be there by then. I think we should be able to find him. This was his birthday banquet, and also his concubine selection hall. He should be there, right? 2 hours passed quickly. Chu Luiyue was adjusting her breath in her room when she suddenly heard the deep and melodious sound of a bell coming from outside. Dong! The sound of the bell quickly spread and fell clearly into everyone's ears. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were as bright as the stars. She looked outside through the window. The birthday banquet was about to begin. Digression, continued at 6 p.m. The list of winners of the August-related activities, 1. Xiaoxiang Academy Star of the Monthly Votes, A Pack of Little Demons, 42 votes, Star of the Review, Memories Yen Io 2. QQ Reading Star of the Review, Yinyutonglu, 155 votes, Star of the Review, Ice Cream, Xiaozhou, Inseparable Friends on the above list. Please add the group in 3 days and privately contact the group leader to receive the related gifts. Chapter 1061. Knock knock. Hu Yang's voice came from outside the door. Miss Dugu, it's time for us to set off. Coming. Chu Luiyue replied and turned to look at Dugu Mobao. Let's go, Debeo. Dugu Mobao was sitting with his back facing her. He didn't move when he heard that, and his small back view exuded a cold aura. Chu Luyue coughed and walked over. From the side, Dugu Mabao had his arms crossed and his eyes closed. His thick eyelashes were slightly curled. Although his small face was cold, his skin was still translucent, and he looked adorable. After they came back, Dugu Mabao had been in this position for 4 whole hours without moving. Chu Luyue secretly admired his composure. At the same time, she thought that this man was very difficult to coax. However, looking at him like this, it was hard for anyone to really get angry. Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat, and she softened her voice. I promise that I'll clarify everything this time, okay? Don't you want to clarify these things in front of everyone? Dugu Mabao finally opened his eyes. His devilish purple eyes were as clear as jade. Really? Of course. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows. I can't possibly watch my own fiancé become someone else's husband, right? Then what do you want to do? Dugu Mabao narrowed his eyes and sized her up. With her current inconspicuous appearance, she probably wouldn't be able to do anything even if she went. Chu Luyue couldn't help but ruffle his hair, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Don't ask about this first. I have my own plans. When Chu Luyue walked out, Lin Tianfeng and the others were already waiting in the courtyard. The girls had also dressed up meticulously, and they looked even more charming than before. Miss Dugu, why didn't you change your clothes? A girl asked curiously. Chu Luyue chuckled. Why should I change my clothes? This is His Highness the Holy Sun's birthday banquet, the woman mumbled. Even if Dugu wasn't going to participate in the consort selection hall, but for such an occasion, shouldn't she dress up grandly? But seeing that she didn't seem to care, they didn't say anything more. With her ordinary appearance, so what if she changed into a set of luxurious clothes? An ear-piercing voice of mockery rang out. Chu Luyue and the others looked over. He saw a group of people walking towards him from the main hall. The leader was a burly middle-aged man. Beside him was a soldier in black armor. The totem of the Yuntian Tower was tattooed on the left side of his chest. He was dressed the same as Hu Yang, so it was obvious that he was of the same status as Hu Yang. Behind the two of them were a few old men and a few women. Without a doubt, these people were also wearing exquisite makeup. From her hair to her fingernails, she had put in a lot of effort. The woman who had spoken earlier was the one who had confronted Chu Luyue at the beginning. Forget it. Since he's so arrogant now, we'll let him go first. In the future, we'll have a chance to get back at him. Han Quan said in a deep voice. Let's go quickly. We can't be late for His Highness Saint's birthday banquet. The banquet was held on the highest peak of the main island, Upstart Peak. Upstart Peak is the most sacred place of the Yuntian Tower. It's heavily guarded and there are strict rules for entry and exit. Other than the family master, His Highness Saint, and the various elders, anyone who wants to enter Upstart Peak has to get permission. Hu Yang explained as he led the group up the stairs. There are 2 halls on Upstart Peak. Do you see the one at the middle of the mountain? That's the ethereal hall, the place where the banquet will be held today. The sacrificial god hall occupies a huge area and has a complicated layout. When we enter later, you must follow me closely and don't wander around. The few of them followed his gaze and saw a majestic palace at the middle of the mountain. At this moment, they could vaguely see the square in front of the palace. It was very lively and crowded. What's at the top of the mountain? Chu Luyue suddenly looked at the palace at the top of the mountain and asked. The sun was setting in the west, and the brilliant light shrouded the black palace. It was so tall that it seemed unreachable. Chapter 1062. Hu Yang's face immediately turned solemn and respectful. That's the sacrificial god hall. His Highness, the Holy Sun, lived there. Compared to the ethereal hall, the sacrificial God hall is even more majestic. Other than His Holiness and His trusted aides, no one else is allowed to approach the sacrificial God hall. Chu Luiyuan narrowed his eyes. As expected. That was where Rongxiu lived. It was probably where he had been staying for the past few years as well. Actually, that used to be the seat of the clan head, but the clan head is currently in seclusion. His Holiness is in charge of the clan affairs, so, Hu Yang didn't continue speaking, but everyone understood what he was trying to say. In truth, the current Holy Son was already the most esteemed existence in the Yuntian Tower. Everyone stared at the Black Palace with grim expressions. Even from such a distance, they could still feel the overwhelming pressure emanating from it. Chu Luiyue suddenly chuckled softly. I see. I'm sure Your Highness the Holy Son must be very busy. Hu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He quickly scanned the surroundings to make sure that no one was around before heaving a sigh of relief. Then, he looked at Chu Luiyue with a conflicted expression. Miss Dugu, we're about to reach the ethereal hall, so I hope that you don't say such things in the future lest you get into trouble. Seeing the anxious look on Hu Yang's face, Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief. I understand. Then, the group continued to move forward. Roughly 15 minutes later, Hu Yang finally came to a stop. They were currently standing on a mountain beside the ascension peak, and their location was almost at the same level as the ethereal hall. Hu Yang took out his white jade token and infused a surge of origin energy into it. The token glowed brightly. The head of the Lin clan has arrived. It did not take long for a silvery streak of light to fly over from the ethereal hall. It was as if a galaxy had descended from the heavens. It was a dazzling sight. Under the darkening sky, it was exceptionally beautiful. At the same time, a similar streak of light flew out from Hu Yang's white jade token and connected with the silver streak of light. Of course, compared to the one that had flown over from the ethereal hall, Hu Yang's was far inferior. It was obvious that the person in charge of receiving them was even stronger than Hu Yang. Hu Yang was the first to jump up and put away the token. Everyone, please. Apart from this group of people, there were a few other similarly gorgeous streams of flowing light that transformed into bridges all around Upstart Peak. Obviously, they were also people from other tribes who had come to attend the banquet. The closer Chu Luiyue got to the ethereal hall, the clearer he could feel the overwhelming pressure coming from the ethereal hall. She looked over. Chapter 1063. Immediately after, a slender woman walked over leisurely. It was already dark outside. She was dressed in a white dress with a blue jade belt around her slender waist. Her hair was like a cloud, and her hair was like a cloud. Especially her eyes, which were pure and moving, as gentle as water. Her red lips were curled up with a hint of playfulness. Her looks and charm could be considered stunning. Unfortunately, compared to the man in front of her, she seemed a little dull. The crowd first saw Rongxiu's immortal-like appearance. When they looked at the others, they were not as stunned. However, compared to the many women in the hall, she was obviously better. When she saw the person, Chu Luiyue narrowed her starry eyes slightly and smiled playfully. So, this is the rumored eldest young lady Jiang. Rongxiu did not seem to hear her. He strode into the hall with his long legs. Jiang Jiwan was stunned for a moment, then hurriedly followed him. Earlier on, she had been discussing with Rongxiu about the academy. Later on, Yan Qing returned and said something to Rongxiu. After that, Rongxiu was very absent-minded. If not for the fact that the academy was involved, he would have gotten up and left long ago. Until just now, when the banquet was about to start, he came straight here. He looked as if he was worried about being late. But this was the strangest thing. Rongxiu was the noble saint. Even if he asked these people to wait here for a few hours, they would not dare to say anything. Moreover, he had always been a strategist. He would never do this, no matter what. He seemed to be in a hurry to do something. Jiang Ziyuan didn't have time to ask clearly before she hurried to follow him. Almost subconsciously, she followed Rong Xiu's line of sight and looked into the hole. Unfortunately, there were too many people in the hole. She could not see clearly who Rong Xiu was looking at. The crowd in the hall finally reacted and hurriedly got up to bow. "Greetings, Your Highness the Saint." Most of the tribe leaders and family heads had already seen Rong Xiu before. At this time, they were still calm. However, for many of the women who came with them, it was their first time seeing the rumored saint. Many people blushed and stared blankly at the man who was striding over. Honorable. Arrogant. It was rumored that His Highness the Saint was extremely talented and powerful. He was decisive in killing and had the power to kill. Therefore, most people's first impression of him was reverence. However, when they saw him with their own eyes, they realized that His Highness the Saint was unparalleled in the world. Just his face alone was enough to make countless women's hearts flutter. Moreover, he held a high position and held power. How many women wouldn't be moved by such a man? Then, under the gazes of countless pairs of eyes, Rong Xiu suddenly took a step and walked toward a certain spot. Thus, everyone's gazes followed his gaze. The people who had not come back to their senses before stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Your Highness the Saint." One of the girls, perhaps because she was too nervous, even moved the table in front of her. Chu Luiyue had just poured wine, but before he could pick it up, half the cup was spilled. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. "These girls are all from Grotto Heaven Cliff." Lin Tianfeng was shocked and immediately nodded, but then he hurriedly said, "These three are, but Miss Dugu is not." Rong Xiu's eyes flashed with interest. "Miss Dugu?" Lin Tianfeng instinctively turned his head and saw that Chu Luiyue was the only one who was still sitting while the others were standing and bowing. She didn't even raise her head, but was pouring wine for herself. Lin Tianfeng's eyes twitched fiercely. What time is it now? She still has the leisure to drink. Does she know that this is His Highness the Saint? Miss Dugu doesn't seem to be happy to see I. Chu Luiyue then looked up and smiled slightly. Her pair of starry eyes were even brighter and more intoxicating than the wine that reflected the lights in her cup. She smiled. Your Highness the Saint, don't misunderstand. I just didn't see you just now. Chapter 1064. Gasps could be heard coming from the hole. Where did this woman come from? How dare she speak to the saint in such a manner? Just as everyone held their breaths and waited for the saint's thunderous response, he suddenly nodded and asked seriously, "Do you see it now?" His voice was normal. Not only was there no anger, but there was also a rare sense of patience. Everyone was speechless. Your Highness. Wake up. What are you doing? Chu Luiyue gently swirled her wine glass, tilted her head, and scrutinized him from head to toe. Then, she slowly nodded. I see it. Yes. After being separated for so long, they finally met. But she did not expect to meet him in such a place and with such an identity. The current Rong Xiu was different from the previous Rong Xiu. In the past, he was always dressed in white, elegant, and immortal-like. But now, he had changed into a black robe, and instantly had a frightening majesty and vigor. Chu Luiyue had only seen him like this once. It was the first day she heard him being addressed as the saint. It was also from then on that Chu Luiyue gradually realized that Rong Xiu was definitely not what he appeared to be. She had expected Rong Xiu's background to be extremely extraordinary, but she did not expect it to be so shocking. Your Highness is indeed handsome and charming, enough to attract the hearts of countless women in the world. Chu Luiyue said with a half-smile. Your Highness, you know each other. Jiang Jiwan finally could not help but ask behind him. Her eyes wandered back and forth between the two of them, and a subtle sense of discomfort welled up in her heart. Rong Xiu's behavior was really not right. All these years, he had not been close to women, and he did not even bother to talk to them. Whether it was the Yuntian Tower or the people of the various tribes, they had all tried countless times to persuade him to get married. But he had never agreed. This time, it was probably because he really couldn't delay it any longer, so he nodded and held this concubine selection ceremony. Although there was a huge commotion this time, Jiang Jiwan knew very well that Rong Xiu definitely did not intend to choose 3 wives and 4 concubines. His attitude towards her was even more impatient than before. But now, he actually said such words to another woman. Most importantly, this woman's appearance was ordinary, and she didn't seem to be of high birth. What was His Highness thinking? Rong Xiu's voice was calm, but he did not deny it. Of course. How could he not recognize his own wife, his own princess consort, and his own fiancée? In the past, I was fortunate enough to see the Holy Sun's face a few times. Chu Liyue smiled. Rong Xiu's brows twitched. These words, she clearly didn't want to have anything to do with him. Your Highness, today is your birthday banquet, and also the concubine selection ceremony. Don't waste your time here. Let's get started quickly. Chu Liyue urged. Rong Xiu's chest tightened. But in front of so many people, he couldn't say anything for the time being. Then, Miss Dugu, please do as you please. Just treat it as your own home. After that, he took a deep look at Chu Liyue, then turned around and walked up to the stage. Hey, Your Highness, Jiang Jiwan looked at Rong Xiu and then at Chu Liyue. What was going on? Ziyuan, come back quickly. At this moment, Jiang Hetian suddenly opened his mouth and waved at Jiang Jiwan. It was really embarrassing for her to stand there alone in front of so many people. Moreover, anyone with eyes could see that Rong Xiu treated her very coldly. After entering, he didn't even look at her. Jiang Hetian's heart ached for his daughter, so he hurriedly called her back. Jiang Jiwan pursed her lips, then obediently walked over to him and sat behind him. That was the first seat in the first row from the left. It was obvious that the Tomb of Immortal Water had a high status. After Rong Xiu left, Lin Tianfeng finally let out the breath he had been holding in. He hurriedly turned to look at Chu Liyue, his brows furrowed. His gaze was complicated, as if he had a lot to say but didn't know where to start. Miss Dugu, you know His Highness the Son of God. Why didn't you say so before? Lin Tianfeng finally spat out a sentence. Chu Liyue blinked. You didn't ask. Lin Tianfeng. He wouldn't ask such a question unless his brain was fried, right? Who would have thought that an ordinary girl from another world would know the high and mighty Son of God? Ha! Who could? No wonder, Lin Jifei, who was standing aside, suddenly understood something. No wonder Yan Qing treated her like that. He had previously felt that Yan Qing's politeness to her, even a hint of obedience, was abnormal. Now he finally understood. The person she knew was the saint. Lin Jifei suddenly remembered that when she was at the Lin residence, she had once asked if His Highness the Son of God was called Rong Xiu. At that time, Lin Tianfeng had even told her not to call the Son of God by his name. At that time, he had thought that she had called out the Son of God's name because she had just arrived and was reckless and ignorant. Now that he thought about it, it was because she had placed the Son of God on the same level from the beginning. That was why her tone was so calm and natural. Oh my God! Miss Dugu, you actually know His Highness the Son of God. No wonder he came over to talk to us just now. The girls beside her exclaimed in admiration, their faces full of envy. Chu Liyue smiled faintly and said, Yes, I didn't know his identity before, so I didn't say anything. I see. The girls didn't doubt her and nodded repeatedly. I knew it was strange that we could sit in the first row. His Highness the Son of God must have known that you were coming and specially arranged it. Yes. In that case, you must be very familiar with him, right? Then do you know what kind of girl His Highness the Son of God likes? Chu Luyue picked up the wine and downed it in one gulp. The burning sensation instantly flowed into her lungs from between her lips and teeth. Almost half of her body was burning up. She rested her chin on one hand and tapped her chin with her slender and fair fingers. The girl he likes. Won't we know when the consort selection ceremony starts? Lin Tianfeng listened to her calm and collected tone, feeling both fortunate and troubled at the same time. Fortunately, they had been treating De Guyu well during this period and didn't offend her. What troubled him was that she didn't seem to realize how shocking it was to be friends with His Highness the Son of God. What did it mean? Most importantly, she didn't seem to be worried about offending the Son of God at all. Listen to what she said just now. He wouldn't dare to say it even if he had 10 guts. But she said it. She didn't intend to save any face for His Highness the Son of God. Left with no choice, Lin Tianfeng could only lower his voice. Miss Dugu, we can't thank you enough for basking in your glory today. Please be careful in the future, don't say anything like that again, lest you offend His Highness the Son of God. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows. Who offended who now? Chapter 1065. Your Highness, are you all right? After Rongxiu walked over, Yuemo couldn't help but ask in a low voice. It was too scary. The scene just now was too scary. Miss Lu Yu's actions were too ruthless. She didn't give His Highness any leeway in front of so many people. However, His Highness couldn't bear to do anything to her and could only let her do whatever she wanted. On the other side, Yan Qing was expressionless. Hearing this, he couldn't help but snort in his heart. Who could he blame for his own sins? He had already advised His Highness to say it, but he refused. Now look. She came straight to his door. And then he said he would pick her up personally, but he didn't go in the end. It would be strange if that person wasn't angry. Rongxiu's expression was normal. Just follow the procedure. Yuemo hurriedly agreed. Yes. After saying that, seeing that His Highness didn't seem to have any other plans, Yuemo anxiously nudged Yan Qing with his elbow. Hey, didn't His Highness ask you to pick up Miss Lu Yu? Why did she come with the Lin family in the end? Look at how angry that person is now. If you had done it well, His Highness wouldn't have fallen to such a state now. Yan Qing sneered. What was the use of him going? He had already knelt on one knee and begged, but that person was still indifferent. In the end, wasn't it because His Highness was in the wrong first? So what if he was cannon fodder? Could he appease that person by himself? Even His Highness couldn't do it, let alone him. In the end, His Highness should be the one suffering this. Seeing that His Highness was calm as usual and Yan Qing was indifferent, Yuemo scratched his head and felt a headache coming on. After thinking for a while, he couldn't think of anything and could only sigh in his heart. Sigh. Forget it. Who cares so much? Since His Highness wasn't in a hurry, he must have a way to deal with it, right? Then Yuemo put these thoughts aside and began to busy himself with the banquet. Rongxiu came earlier than expected. After he came in, other tribes arrived one after another. Because of his existence, the atmosphere in the hall was clearly more solemn than before. Even though he had already told them to be casual, they didn't dare to be casual. Especially the young ladies, all of them competed in beauty and were dignified and generous. Every single word and action of theirs was extremely well behaved, as if they were afraid of making a mistake and drawing the annoyance of the person above them. Behind them, Cold Mountain Valley and the others also arrived. After entering, the group of people first saw Rong Xiu sitting at the head of the table. Only then did they realize that they were late and hurriedly knelt down to pay their respects. Rong Xiu didn't mind and let them sit down. However, the faces of Han Quan and the others were still pale. They all knew very well that with such a big mistake, they probably didn't have any more chances. Only Han Zishu and a few others did not react for a while. They were only focused on Rong Xiu, who was sitting at the head of the table. He had the grace of a dragon and the grace of a phoenix, a clear and evildoer. It was normal for such a person to be tempted. It was only when Rong Xiu looked over with a tinge of coldness in his eyes that the overwhelming suppression suddenly attacked. Only then did the few of them finally wake up. "If you don't want your eyes, just say so," Rong Xiu said coldly. Only then did Han Zishu and the others hurriedly lower their heads and beg for mercy. This scene made everyone in the hall feel very complicated. Duguyu in front said that she didn't see him, but he insisted on letting her see. Now that the few women from Cold Mountain Valley were staring at him in a daze, he actually wanted to dig out their eyeballs. Actually, it wasn't that His Highness Saint had never done such a thing before. However, with the previous incident as a foil, this incident was too strange. Why was there such a huge difference between people? After much persuasion, the group from Cold Mountain Valley finally begged for forgiveness and went to the corner behind the crowd helplessly. At this moment, they saw that Lin Tianfeng and the others were actually sitting in the first row. Han Zishu was shocked. Just as she was about to speak, Han Quan held her back. Now that they couldn't even take care of themselves, how could they care about others? Moreover, Han Zishu and the others didn't know, but Han Quan and Qin Ting knew the pros and cons. The fact that Lin Tianfeng and the others could sit here peacefully already explained too many things. Even if they wanted to find trouble with them, they had to ask about the situation first. Thus, the group of people went down sullenly just like that. Let's see how arrogant they can be this time. Miss Dugu, it's all thanks to you this time. Otherwise, we would have been bullied by them again. The few women from Grotto Heaven Cliff felt relieved. Now that everyone knows that you and His Highness Saint know each other, no one will dare to provoke you in the future. Chu Luyue smiled and glanced at Lu Ruhai, who had been silent all this while. I hope so. After everyone arrived, the banquet officially began. First, the people from each tribe presented their congratulatory gifts to wish His Highness Saint a happy birthday. Piles of flowery words were poured out as if they were free. Chu Luyue was drowsy listening to them. Rong Xiu glanced at her and saw her lazy and sleepy look. He couldn't help but laugh and interrupt Umo, who was reading the list of gifts. All right. I'll look at these later. Today is not only Ai's birthday, but also the consort selection ceremony. Ai's time to choose a consort, so let's get started. Everyone was taken aback and immediately became excited. This was the highlight of tonight's event. Rong Xiu waved his wrist and handed a booklet to Yan Qing. First, check the name list for the consort selection ceremony. Yes. Yan Qing opened it respectfully, and then his face froze. He quickly looked up at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu looked calm. Read it. Yan Qing swallowed his saliva with difficulty. The name list for the consort selection ceremony is as follows: Grotto Heaven Cliff, Lin Miaoer, Lin Shuangshuang, Su Xiaoyan. Du Duguyu. Digression, 6 p.m. Chapter 1066. Duguyu. Lin Tianfeng and the others were shocked when they heard this name. How could her name be on the list? A young lady beside Chu Luyue lost her balance and directly dropped the wine cup in her hands onto the floor. Bang! The crisp sound of a jade cup shattering rang out, immediately drawing everyone's gazes over. The hall fell silent. Rong Xiu looked over and raised his eyebrows. Patriarch Lin, what's wrong? Lin Tianfeng hurriedly stood up. Your Highness, this Miss Dugu isn't on the Heavenly Cave Cliffs list. This, oh. Rong Xiu seemed surprised. He raised his voice and said to Yan Qing. Let me have a look. Yan Qing hurriedly presented the booklet with both hands. Rong Xiu took it and scrutinized it. He then looked up and lightly said, I'm sorry. He raised his head and said, Duguyu's name is clearly written on it. If Patriarch Lin doesn't believe me, you can take a look for yourself. Lin Tianfeng choked. How could he not believe His Highness the Holy Sun's words? But this can't be right. The list had been delivered to Rong Xiu before Duguyu went to Heavenly Cave Cliff. Moreover, he knew that Duguyu had brought her child to find her husband. How could he dare to add her name to the list? There must be a mistake, Lin Tianfeng swallowed with difficulty. His face was tense and his body was tense. Even though he had seen his fair share of storms, he was still stunned by this scene. The others present didn't know Duguyu's background, but he did. If someone found out, wouldn't it be, Patriarch Lin, are you saying that the Yuntian Tower made a mistake with this booklet? Rong Xiu leaned back in his chair and asked lazily. Although he spoke casually, how could Lin Tianfeng admit to this? It wasn't like he was tired of living. Why would he publicly criticize the people of Yuntian Tower for their incompetence? I didn't mean that, Lin Tianfeng's voice was much weaker. Rong Xiu smiled and threw the booklet back to Yan Qing. Forget it. This matter can't be explained in a short time. Let's leave it at that for now. It won't be too late to investigate after the matter is over. Everyone. This is your concubine selection list, how can you say it so easily? But since Rong Xiu had already spoken, the others naturally couldn't say anything. What's more, there were many people participating in the consort selection ceremony, so it didn't matter if she was there or not. Such a woman with no background was nothing to worry about. Yan Qing held the booklet and felt her hands burning. He lowered his eyes again and looked at the words, Duguyu, that had clearly just been added. His heart was in turmoil. No wonder His Highness wasn't anxious at all. He was waiting here. Rong Xiu's slender and fair fingers tapped on the table. Continue. Yan Qing took a deep breath and was about to continue reading. Han, wait. Yan Qing was abruptly interrupted as soon as he opened his mouth. Don't you understand what His Highness the Chosen Saint means? But why? That Duguyu is clearly not qualified, and even the chief of the Lin family said that he didn't mention her name. Why does your Highness have to go through so much trouble when it can be solved with just one sentence? Jiang Hetian was getting impatient. Why are you always so hung up on this problem? It's just Duguyu, isn't it? Even if she joined in, would it affect the final result in any way? Other things aside, just her appearance and figure alone make her no match at all. Is it worth it to quarrel with His Highness over such an insignificant person? Jiang Ji1 was speechless for a moment. As long as you perform well later, you'll be able to get the position of princess consort. There's no one more suitable than you to ascend to this position. Jiang Hetian advised in a sincere and heartfelt manner. Jiang Ji1 could only nod. But for some reason, when she thought of the conversation between His Highness and that woman, she felt a little uneasy. Yan Qing continued. Han, wait. Another voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Duguyu who spoke this time. The corners of her lips curled slightly, and she said with a smile. I think eldest young Miss Jiang is right. Your Highness the Chosen Saint, please cross out my name. He knew that this man was black-hearted, but he did not expect that he would not stop until he had dug his own grave. How could he say something like that? He was really shameless. Chu Luiyue almost couldn't hold it in and wanted to curse out loud. Even Dugu Maobao, who had been quiet all this time, could not help but lift his eyelids when he heard this. A dark light flashed in his demonic purple eyes. This kid was still the same as before. No, he had become even more powerful. To achieve his goal, he would do anything. Now, in front of so many people, he did not care about his face at all. Lin Tianfeng felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He did not expect that things would develop to this point. If he still could not see through His Highness's intentions, he would have wasted all these years. Wasn't it obvious that he wanted Duguyu to participate in the consort selection? He did not need to ask to know how that name appeared on the list. But the key was that Duguyu had already said that she had a fiancé, and His Highness still said that, no matter how high her fiancé's status was, could it be higher than His Highness? Not to mention whether that man was here now, even if he was, would he dare to stand out when His Highness said so? At this point, there seemed to be no solution to the matter. Lin Tianfeng could not help but look at Chu Luyue, and then at Dugu Mabao, who had been quietly standing beside her, and sighed. This child was only 3 or 4 years old. How innocent! He hesitated for a moment and was about to speak when Lin Qifei pulled him back. Father, please calm down. Lin Tianfeng was a little hesitant. But Her Highness is really. She is alone. If we don't help her, then, Lin Qifei shook his head lightly. Let's wait and see. If you stand out now, you won't be of much help. Lin Tianfeng knew that he was telling the truth. Grotto Heaven Cliff did not have a high status, and it was all because of Duguyu that they were able to receive such treatment. If His Highness wanted to do something, even the Jiang clan in the Immortal Water Tomb could not stop him, let alone them. In the end, Lin Tianfeng could only nod his head. No matter what, she saved your life. If anything happens, we can't just sit by and do nothing. Lin Qifei nodded lightly. There seemed to be an undercurrent in his light eyes. He looked at Rong Xiao and Chu Luyue without batting an eyelid, then lowered his eyes. The relationship between these two. What's so good about that Duguyu? His Highness has taken a liking to her. In a secluded corner of the main hall, the people in Cold Mountain Valley were stunned by the scene before them. Han Zishu's eyes widened in disbelief. With that kind of appearance, that kind of background, and most importantly, she already has a fiancé. How could she win His Highness's favor? What is His Highness thinking? Sure. Han Quan still had a bit of rationality left and hurriedly stopped her. Don't criticize His Highness. Han Zishu shrank back, but her face was still filled with dissatisfaction. I'm just curious. What the hell is going on? I don't know how that bitch bewitched His Highness. Sheet. Before they could finish their sentence, a young woman in front suddenly turned around. Her makeup was exquisite, and her looks were top-notch. Clearly, she was also here to participate in the consort selection. But at this moment, there was a hint of mockery on her face. She looked at Han Zishu and the others as if she was looking at fools. Don't say things like that. Be careful not to be overheard by others. That Miss Dugu was acquainted with His Highness in the past. If you're not afraid of getting into trouble, go ahead and continue. With that, she turned around with a cold smile. Not only were they late, but they were also brainless. These people in Cold Mountain Valley were really tired of living. Han Zishu and the others were confused. That Duguyu knew His Highness the Saint. How could it be? In this atmosphere that was almost suffocating, Chu Luyue was the first to recover from her shock. She narrowed her eyes and suddenly smiled. Your Highness, what if I insist on saying no? Digression, it felt good to cheat his wife. It felt good to cheat her all the time. This was actually the first time Lin Tianfeng had seen this legendary existence. However, he was very clear that 36 revered Elder Ming had also come to find Duguyu. As expected, 36 respected Elder Ming's gaze landed on Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue frowned slightly, but soon relaxed as a look of understanding flashed across his eyes. Honorable Elder 36 Ming. Ming 36 was stared at by her clear, dark eyes and immediately felt guilty. He clenched his fist and coughed. Cough, alas, His Highness the Holy Sun has spoken words of gold. How can you go back on your words in front of everyone? Just treat it as if you're participating for fun. Anyway, it won't affect anything, right? Everyone was confused. Participating for fun. 36 respected Elder Ming, is it really appropriate for you to say that? So many people present have a cautious and expectant attitude towards this matter. What do you mean by letting Dugayu participate for fun? Looking at 36 respected Elder Ming's expression, Chu Luyue suddenly had a thought. She narrowed her eyes and glanced at Rong Xiu, who was sitting at the head of the table, without batting an eyelid. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. Chu Luyue's eyes flickered. All right. With 36 respected Elder Ming's interference and Chu Luyue's help, this matter finally proceeded smoothly. The atmosphere was a little strange. Many people started whispering to each other. So 36 respected Elder Ming actually knows that Dugayu. What exactly is her background? I'm not sure. But since she came with those people from Cave Heaven Cliff's Lin family, logically speaking, she shouldn't be of noble birth, right? That's true. But His Highness the Holy Sun and 36 respected Elder Ming's attitude towards her seems to be very unusual. This girl looks ordinary. I really don't know what His Highness sees in her. Heh, so what? Today, all the noble ladies of the various clans are here. How can there be a place for her to stand? But then again, why is only 36 respected Elder Ming here for such an important occasion? Where are the other respected elders? Perhaps the other respected elders have their own matters to deal with or are cultivating. Didn't you see that 36 respected Elder Ming also came out of seclusion and hurried over? Moreover, not all the respected elders of Yuntian Tower are convinced by His Highness the Holy Sun. Sho! We can't say such things. Everyone was discussing. Jiang Ji-won slowly pinched the corner of her clothes. Jiang Hitian turned back to look at her and saw her aggrieved eyes. He sighed and comforted her. All right, Ziyuan. Daddy knows that you are aggrieved, but His Highness the Holy Sun has always been like this. No one can stop him from doing what he wants to do. Don't worry. According to Dugayu's status, even if she is chosen, she will at most have the fate of a concubine. She doesn't even have the qualifications to be a concubine, let alone a princess consort. You don't have to worry, I'm not worried about this. Jiang Ziyuan bit her lips, and her voice was choked with sobs. I'm just sad, he must be interested in this girl. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done this. She had known him for so long, but he had never done anything especially for her. How could she not be sad when compared to him? What made it even harder for her to accept was that Dugayu didn't seem to want to accept her kindness even though she was being so generous. Rong Xiu was the most handsome man in the world. How could her so-called fiancé compare to him? Jiang Hitian patted her hand. As long as the person sitting next to him is you, he will be yours for the rest of his life. As for the rest, why should you care? These words finally made Jiang Ji-won snap out of her daze. She held back the tears in her eyes, nodded her head forcefully, and said stubbornly, "Of course I won't let others take away everything that belongs to me." Jiang Hitian heaved a sigh of relief and slowly smiled. This is the young mistress of the Jiang clan in the immortal water tomb. You are my precious daughter. Jiang Ji-won pursed her lips and looked up slightly at Chu Luyue. Thinking about everything that had happened just now, she felt even more uncomfortable. How could such a girl stay by his side? It would be best to find a way to chase her out from the beginning. Umo quickly brought a chair over and invited 36 respected elder Ming to sit to the left of Rongxiu. As Chu Luyue listened to the crowd's discussion, she glanced over. Rongxiu seemed to have specially prepared seats for the respected elders. Chapter 1069. Miss Dugu, it turns out that you even know 36 respected elder Ming. Lin Tianfeng's current feelings could no longer be described as shock. First, it was Lord Yanqing, then His Highness the Holy Sun, and now even the reclusive 36 respected elder Ming was familiar with her. Was she really just an ordinary outsider? He wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Chu Luyue regained her senses and nodded nonchalantly. We're not very familiar with each other, just. We've met a few times. Lin Tianfeng's eyes were filled with resentment. How could she have such an attitude after meeting him a few times? It was rumored that 36 respected elder Ming didn't even care about the Ming clan's matters. If it was really nothing, why would he say such things to her? Lin Tianfeng felt that he couldn't understand the woman in front of him anymore. She looked ordinary, but she was able to cure Zhi Fei's illness as an 8th-grade celestial physician. She seemed to have no background, but she had dealings with the most honorable person in Yuntian Tower. She seemed to be hiding many secrets that couldn't be seen through. Lin Qifei looked at her meaningfully, then his gaze swept past Dugu Maobao. Perhaps, his guess was true. Then, Yanqing was finally able to continue reading from the booklet. Fortunately, there were no more accidents after that. When he finished reading, he closed the booklet and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Rongxiu leaned against the chair, languid and calm, with a noble aura that came from his bones. I like to play chess, and I also like women who play chess well. So, the first round is chess. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves, and countless silver lights flew out. The bright lights intertwined in mid-air, and quickly formed a huge chessboard in the center of the hall. Whoever can play with eye to the end will be the winner of this round. The hall was silent for a moment, and then there were whispers. Who would have thought that His Highness the Holy Sun's first round of choosing a consort would be a game of chess? However, many people knew that His Highness the Holy Sun liked to play chess. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with doing this. Jiang Hitian glanced at Jiang Jiwan with a smile. Don't you usually like and are good at this? From this, it can be seen that His Highness still cares about you. Jiang Jiwan's cheeks were dyed with a touch of crimson, and she was a little shy. Father, don't tease me. Did father say something wrong? You've been learning chess from the patriarch since you were 3 years old, and your skills are exquisite. There are very few people in the world who can defeat you. Who else but you can claim first place? Jiang Jiwan's face turned even redder. Looking at the shining chessboard, her eyes were filled with excitement and joy. It seemed that he did remember. Yanqing asked. Who wants to be the first to come up and give it a try? Everyone immediately quieted down. Soon, a voice came from the crowd. Yunwu Mountain's Pei Pei is willing to give it a try. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. It was a woman in a crimson outfit. She was tall and slender. She had a fair oval face and delicate facial features. Among the many women who dressed up meticulously, she wasn't the top beauty. However, the valiant and heroic spirit between her eyebrows added a different kind of elegance to her. She had a wide saber at her waist, as if she was ready to draw it and fight at any time. After saying that, she walked straight to the center of the hall and stood on the huge chessboard. The eldest miss of Yunwu Mountain. I heard that she has a fierce personality and does things in a hurry. Seeing her today, it's true. She dares to be the first to go up. She's really brave. I wonder how many steps she can take. I heard that His Highness the Holy Sun's chess skills are very good. No matter how many steps she can take, she can still show her face in front of His Highness. At least it's better than being unknown, right? No matter how the people around her discussed, Pei Pei acted as if she didn't hear them. She raised her chin and looked at Rongxiu. Rongxiu said, "Miss Pei, please go first." "Thank you, Your Highness." Pei Pei responded with a grunt, and then started very nimbly. Dark red force gathered in her palm. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she hit the chessboard with the force. Buzz! A slight fluctuation was felt. A dark red round chess piece instantly appeared on the chessboard. "Your Highness, please." However, just as Pei Pei finished speaking, a golden chess piece quickly appeared on the chessboard. Rongxiu said indifferently, "This chessboard contains all the chess games that I have seen and played. Therefore, it can automatically place a piece." Pei Pei was stunned. "In other words, if I can't play a new game, Your Highness won't make a move personally?" Rongxiu nodded. Regretful sighs could be heard in the hall. Some of the women who were ready to make a move immediately withered. Didn't this mean that if they couldn't play to the same level as His Highness, they wouldn't even have a chance to fight him? If they weren't strong enough, there was no point in going up. It would be very embarrassing. A hint of astonishment flashed across Pei Pei's face, but she quickly recovered. She didn't say anything and continued. However, every time she placed a piece, the chessboard would quickly react and give her a countermove. More importantly, with every move, the pressure on the chessboard would become heavier. Pei Pei gradually felt the pressure, and the speed at which she played slowed down. Finally, after about half an hour, Pei Pei was no longer able to withstand the terrifying pressure. No matter how she tried, the origin power she unleashed would dissipate an inch or so away from the chessboard. Chapter 1070. Jiang Ji-1 of the Tomb of Immortal Water was a famous genius in the Divine Ruins world. Jiang Ji-1 stood up, walked toward the huge chessboard, and stood still. She was beautiful to begin with, and today, she had dressed up meticulously. Naturally, she looked even more alluring. Moreover, she had only put on light makeup, and her outfit was simple and elegant. Compared to the other women who had put on makeup, she looked even more elegant and refined. Under the faint glow of the chessboard, she stood tall, graceful, and gentle. She had already surpassed the other women before her. She glanced at the chessboard, raised her hand, and placed a blue chess piece. Like before, the chessboard reacted quickly, and a golden chess piece appeared in another position. Jiang Ji-1 didn't hesitate at all, and continued to place her chess piece. Time passed slowly. Jiang Ji-1 had already made 20 moves, becoming the person who had made the most moves so far, but she still didn't stop. In fact, she didn't even slow down the speed of her chess game. Compared to the others before her, she was clearly much more relaxed. The hall gradually quieted down, and everyone had different expressions. Only a few people were discussing and exclaiming in low voices. As expected of the young miss of the Tomb of Immortal Water. Her strength is indeed not something that we can compare to. It's been rumored that she's going to be the princess consort. Now, who else could it be? She's only 22 this year, right? I heard that she's already become a demigod. Hiss. No wonder she's so powerful. This kind of appearance, this kind of background, really can't be compared. I heard that when she was young, she spent most of her time in the Yuntian Tower, and the Yuntian Tower's patriarch has always doted on her. Her chess skills were also learned from him. Does this mean that His Highness the Holy Sun set up this test for her? Jiang Ji-1 was focused on her chess game, but she wasn't weak, and her 5 senses were sharp, so she could hear most of what was being said. A sweet feeling welled up in her heart. She placed another chess piece, and at the same time, looked at Rongxiu, who was sitting at the head of the table, and smiled. "Your Highness, please take this." With this move, it was time for him to make a move. However, when she placed her chess piece, another golden chess piece appeared on the chessboard. Jiang Ji-won's smile froze on her face. Chu Luyue poured a glass of wine out of boredom. I thought that this eldest Miss Jiang was really powerful, but I didn't expect. Did she overestimate herself, or did God underestimate Rongxiu? Did he really think that he could force Rongxiu to act personally? Looking at the huge chessboard again, she suddenly narrowed her eyes and leaned closer to Dugu Debao, who was sitting at the side, and lowered her voice. Debao, why do I feel that this chessboard is somewhat familiar? Dugu Mabao's expression did not change. All chessboards in the world look the same. What's there to be familiar about? Something's not right. Chu Luyue shook his head and said firmly. I must have seen it before, this aura. Suddenly, her pupils shrank, and she looked at Dugu Mabao in disbelief. You pulled me down before, bang. There was a sudden explosion on the chessboard. A terrifying impact spread out in all directions. Jiang Ji-won was caught off guard, and she was the first to bear the brunt of it, and instantly flew out. Ziyuan. Jiang Hitian was shocked, and he immediately got up and threw out a force. Jiang Ji-won's body was instantly enveloped by a translucent barrier. With the help of this barrier, Jiang Ji-won finally landed safely. She looked at the chessboard in shock. The blue chess piece on it was already in a dead end. Digression, continue at 6 p.m. Chapter 1071. Jiang Ji-won, lost. Yuemo raised his hand and wrote. Jiang Ji-won of the Tomb of Immortal Water, 43 moves. This number was already the best compared to the previous girls, but she still couldn't reach the end and ask Rongxiu to make a move. Crash! The chess pieces on the chessboard instantly disappeared and returned to their original state. The hall was silent. Everyone's eyes moved back and forth between the chessboard and Jiang Ji-won. Jiang Ziyuan felt as if there was a dagger on her back. She felt a burning pain on her face. She looked at the chessboard in front of her in disbelief. How could this be? This game was so difficult. If it were someone else, they probably wouldn't be able to reach this point. That was why she was sure that this game had reached the point where Rongxiu needed to make a move. But, no. This also meant that someone had once taken more steps than her on this chessboard. But who could that person be? Could it be the clan leader or 36 respected elder Ming? Jiang Ji-won couldn't guess. Alright, Ziyuan, you're already first. Don't think too much about the rest. Jiang Hitian comforted her. No one knew a daughter better than a father. Of course, he knew that Jiang Ji-won was very unhappy and aggrieved. She probably wanted to wait for Rongxiu to make a move so that the two of them could play together. Jiang Ji-won took a deep breath and forced a smile. Thank you, father. I understand. She just felt a little regretful. Rongxiu's chess skills were superb. She had known for a long time. It was a pity that she had never played a proper game of chess with him. Most of the time, it was the clan leader who played with him while she watched from the side. Every time she was eager to play, she wanted to set up the chessboard and play with him to her heart's content. However, he always rejected her with one reason or another. She thought that with today's opportunity, she could. Jiang Hitian comforted her in a low voice. His Highness is very good at this game. You still have some gaps. When you come to the Yuntian Tower in the future, you can learn more from His Highness. Jiang Ji-won's originally aggrieved and unwilling expression suddenly turned into a trace of shyness. Then, she nodded seriously. Yes. I know. Chu Luyue, who was originally resting his chin on one hand and watching all of this with a lazy expression, raised his eyebrows. In the future. Come to the Yuntian Tower. Learn more from His Highness. A smile appeared on Chu Luyue's lips. So they had already made their plans for the future. Yan Qing looked at the crowd. Is there anything else you want to continue? There was complete silence. Madam Yan Qing, basically everyone who wants to try has already come up. Moreover, the best results have already come out. I think this round should be over, right? Jiang Hetian laughed. Although he looked amiable, his tone was incomparably firm and did not leave any room for refutation. Wait a minute. A clear and calm female voice sounded, breaking the silence. Chu Liuyue's lips curved slightly, containing a hint of a smile. I want to give it a try too. You? Jiang Hetian asked instinctively, looking at her with a somewhat suspicious gaze. Just now, everyone had more or less seen how difficult this chess game was. If she still wanted to come up at this time, wouldn't she be asking for trouble? Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows. Why, can't I? Yes. Of course you can. Before Jiang Hetian could say anything, 36 respected Elder Ming, who was sitting above, hurriedly urged her. Little girl, go quickly. Everyone, Chu Liyue, 36 respected Elder Ming seemed to have just realized that this was a little inappropriate. He quickly coughed, then quickly shot Rongxiu a look. How is it? I've done a good job, haven't I? Rongxiu's thin lips curved slightly, and there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. Praise the respected elders. Chu Liyue turned to look at Dugu Maobao beside her, pinched his chubby little face, and snorted softly. I'll settle your score with you when I get back. Dugu Maobao's eyelids twitched. It was rare that he did not get angry because his precious face was being pinched. Seeing his reaction, Chu Liyue was even more certain of her guess. She collected her thoughts, dusted her clothes, and walked toward the chessboard. Please make way. Chu Liyue's smile was very polite when she came up to her. Jiang Jiwan pursed her lips, feeling more and more uncomfortable. However, she forced herself to hold it in and did not flare up. She walked back with Jiang Hetian. However, her eyes did not move away from Chu Liyue. She wanted to see how capable this woman was. Light flashed on the huge chessboard. Chu Liyue stood with her hands behind her back straight. Her long black hair fell like clouds, and she was dressed in a neat red dress. She seemed to be able to attract everyone's attention just by standing there. She stared at the chessboard for a moment, then raised her hand and placed a chess piece. A red force flew out and hit the chessboard instantly. Buzz! The chessboard vibrated. A golden go piece appeared right after. That familiar feeling was getting stronger and stronger. Chu Liyue did not hesitate at all and placed her chess pieces continuously. Soon, the crowd was shocked to find that she did not need to think at all when she was playing chess. Her movements were so fast that it made people's hair stand on end. Sometimes, before the golden chess piece could fully form on the chessboard, Chu Liyue would have already made her move. How is she so fast? It couldn't have been done randomly, right? Many people in the crowd began to question her. It can't be. Look at the chessboard, isn't she moving all the time? She's not playing randomly. She is really good at this. Her thoughts are quick and flexible. This ability is probably even better than Lady Jiang's. At this moment, Jiang Jiwan's expression had changed from indifference to shock. Of course, she could tell that Dugu Yu's skill level was higher than hers. And not just by a little. Her gaze was fixed on the chessboard. At the beginning, she could still keep up, but gradually, the game became more complicated, and she had to think for a while before making each move. However, Dugu Yu did not stop at all. Soon, Jiang Jiwan's mind was in a mess. She's about to make the 43rd move. Suddenly, someone shouted. If she makes one more move, she'll beat Lady Jiang. Before the voice could finish, Chu Luyue waved her hand and placed another chess piece without hesitation. Many people sucked in a cold breath. Dugayu's performance had already surpassed Jiang Jiwan's. Oh my god, I didn't expect Dugayu to be so good. How far do you think she'll go? I really can't tell, but, looking at how relaxed she is now, it shouldn't be a problem for her to ask His Highness for help, right? Even Lady Jiang couldn't do it. If Dugayu really succeeds, then, Jiang Jiwan bit her lip. Chu Luyue did not care about her surroundings. Now, there was only the gigantic chessboard and Rong Xiao in front of her. Boz. She placed a chess piece. This time, no golden chess piece appeared on the chessboard. Chu Luyue raised her head slightly and looked at the man sitting on the seat of honor opposite her. She raised her eyebrows and smiled brightly. Your Highness, please. Chapter 1072. Her smile was bright and resplendent, and her eyes were like stars. Her facial features were clearly ordinary, but because of this smile, they instantly became lively. Many people were slightly stunned. This woman looked ordinary at first glance, but upon closer inspection, she seemed to be extremely beautiful. Just the slight ripple of light in her jade-like eyes was enough to move people's hearts. Rong Xiao didn't look surprised at all. Instead, he smiled slightly. His originally cold and noble eyes instantly melted like the ice in early spring. There seemed to be a vortex in his deep eyes that could easily swallow people and make them sink. He raised his hand, and a golden stream of light flew out. Boz! A golden chess piece fell, blocking the path of Chu Luyue's chess piece. His Highness really made a move. She shouldn't be able to hold on much longer, right? It's rumored that His Highness's chess skills are superb. So what? Even if she loses now, she's still number one. What's more, she's the only one who can ask His Highness to make a move. Countless eyes were focused on the two people facing each other in the main hall. They were all focused, afraid that they would miss a single thing. However, not everyone was like this. At the very least, Jiang Jiwan wasn't in the mood to patiently watch it this time. Her heart seemed to be clenched by something, and her chest felt suffocated. The trace of discomfort caused by Dugayu at the beginning quickly spread to her whole body at this time. Ziyuan, how are you? Jiang Hitian frowned, his eyes full of worry. Jiang Jiwan forced a smile. Dad, don't worry. I'm fine. How could she be fine? She had always been outstanding since she was a child. Whether it was family background, appearance, or talent, she almost easily crushed others. She had always been the most eye-catching existence in the crowd. But now, all the glory had been taken away by the woman named Dugayu. She was obviously so ordinary, and there wasn't a single highlight on her, but she seemed to have some kind of magic that could easily attract everyone's attention. Needless to say, the level she was showing at this time was extraordinary. Jiang Hitian glanced at the chessboard. Ziyuan, she should be about to lose now, right? He didn't really understand what was going on, but based on his past experience, Dugayu shouldn't be able to hold on for long. If she lost faster, Ziyuan's mood might be slightly better. However, Jiang Jiwan clenched her fists. Her throat seemed to be blocked by something and she couldn't say a word. It wasn't that she couldn't understand the intense battle on the chessboard. But it was precisely because she could understand that she felt even worse. Because compared to Rong Xiao, Dugayu was actually not too inferior. The two of them were clearly evenly matched. Jiang Jiwan knew that she was definitely a genius in this aspect. She could easily crush 99% of the people here. However, compared to the woman standing in front of the chessboard with a calm and relaxed expression, it instantly dimmed and was not worth mentioning. Time slowly passed. Rong Xiao and Chu Luyue had each placed their pieces dozens of times. The situation on the chessboard became more and more tangled, and the battle between the two sides became more and more tragic. Chu Liuyue's red pieces were like a flood dragon, chasing Rongxiu relentlessly, trying to encircle and suppress him from all directions. His chess style was fierce. On the other hand, Rongxiu was more conservative, but his defense was tight, and there was still room for him to advance and retreat. Both sides had their own advantages, and the battle was extremely fierce. The two of them went back and forth. The chessboard, which was already shining brightly, was now even more dazzling. Rongxiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. Even across the chessboard, he could still keenly perceive the biting cold air coming from the opposite side. He rubbed his temples helplessly, and a helpless and doting smile flashed across his eyes. If this could make her calm down, it would be good. Finally, when the huge chessboard was almost filled to the brim, the crimson flood dragon finally trapped the patch of golden light. The fierce battle and the chaotic flowing light had already attracted the attention of everyone in the hall. Everyone unconsciously held their breaths. The atmosphere became more and more tense. Life and death, it was at this moment. Chu Liyue looked at the chessboard in front of her. That familiar feeling had almost reached its peak at this moment. Countless scenes flashed through her mind. Those scenes that were once blurry and could not be seen clearly seemed to be gradually becoming clearer at this moment. But for some reason, there seemed to be a layer of fog in front of her. She knew very well that she was only one step away from seeing everything clearly. Within her dantian, her force surged wildly, and finally gathered in her palm. Then, she raised her hand and was about to place a piece. But for some reason, her hand suddenly trembled slightly. Something seemed to be gushing out from the bottom of her heart. She clenched her teeth and abruptly flung out the origin power. A red chess piece landed on the chessboard. Buzz! It was like a sword cutting through the throat. The golden color instantly dissipated. And it rapidly transformed into countless tiny golden light spots, spreading in all directions. Rongxiu raised his hand, and the golden color that filled the sky quickly flew back. At the same time, the chessboard also silently dissipated. On the opposite side, the otherworldly and demonic man's lips curled up slightly. You win. Crack. The black pyramid in Chu Liuyue's dantian suddenly cracked open a third crack. A bright golden light pierced through it. In an instant, it was as if the thin veil in front of her had suddenly been lifted. Those scenes became clear. Digression, nothing today. Jiang Jiwan's heart surged with an unprecedented sense of crisis. Jiang He-tian turned his head and saw Jiang Jiwan's embarrassed and wronged expression. He frowned. Even he didn't expect that the first place would be snatched by Dugayu, who came out of nowhere. Ziyuan must be feeling terrible. She was used to being proud, how could she accept such an outcome? Ziyuan, don't worry, this is only the first stage. You just have to work hard and use your full strength, you will definitely be able to turn the tables. Jiang He-tian comforted her patiently. But she won the first place, Jiang Jiwan murmured. So what? Don't tell me that the Yuntian Tower can really let such an unidentified woman become the princess consort. Jiang He-tian was very confident. As long as Rongxiu weighed the pros and cons, he would definitely leave the princess consort to the immortal water tomb. As for the others, those lowly concubines, he could just pick any one of them. None of that mattered. As he spoke, he saw from the corner of his eye that there was blood dripping from Jiang Jiwan's palm. He was shocked. Ziyuan, your hand. Jiang Jiwan came back to her senses and subconsciously leaned her hand back, gritting her teeth. I'm fine. Father is right, I will take back the first place later. She would never let Dugayu steal the limelight again. Thinking of this, she looked up at Rongxiu. Your Highness, the first stage is over. Then, let's start the second stage. She had to win this second stage. This 6-pole lock is one of the ultimate moves of the immortal water tomb. It looks simple, but in reality, its sealing power is extremely strong. Rumor has it that even if one's strength is one level lower than the opponent, the cultivator can still use this move to seal the opponent in battle. And then counterattack. Using this move to deal with this round is just right. If Jiang Ji-won directly wins, then the rest of the people don't need to go up. Jiang Ji-won looked at Xue Xue. Xue Xue, if you admit defeat now, I can stop. This is good for both of them. Xue Xue looked up and a trace of disdain flashed across its eyes. Admit defeat. Wasn't she overestimating herself? 6-pole lock. What the hell? Xue Xue raised its paw and waved it fiercely. Several streaks of light flew past. Chi chi chi. Instantly, the crowd heard the sound of something being cut apart. Then, they saw that the 6-pole lock that was hovering above Xue Xue's head had been cut open from the middle. The light on it quickly dimmed. The blood in Jiang Ji-won's chest and abdomen surged. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. She looked at Xue Xue in shock. How did its strength suddenly improve so much? Xue Xue bared its teeth and swiped its paw at her. Did you really think that I ate so much yellow sand for nothing? Digression, Kavinka felt terrible. Update at 6 p.m. Chapter 1075. Roar. A vigorous figure suddenly appeared in front of Jiang Ji-won. It jumped with all its might and blocked Xue Xue's claw. Rip, the sound of sharp claws tearing through flesh was jarring. Jiang Ji-won hurriedly retreated, her face pale. In that instant, she really thought she was going to die under Xue Xue's claws. Everyone looked over and saw that the one blocking Jiang Ji-won was also a fiend. It was a muscular leopard. Its entire body was brown with black spots, and it had a pair of wings on its back. A pair of jade-green eyes, deep and terrifying. This was Jiang Ji-won's contracted divine beast, the double-winged black star leopard. At this moment, Xue Xue had viciously torn off a piece of flesh on its back. Fresh blood was dripping from the wound. On the other hand, Xue Xue's claws were stained with some blood. It was completely unaffected. Everyone could see that although this double-winged black star leopard was also a divine beast, its level and ability were obviously lower than Xue Xue's. In such a situation, it would not be easy for Jiang Ji-won to win. Jiang Ji-won was still in shock. If the double-winged black star leopard had not appeared in time, she would have. The more panicked she was, the deeper the hatred in her heart. She gritted her teeth. Leopard, go. However, the double-winged black star leopard did not immediately move. It seemed to hesitate. It lowered its body warily, but its gaze toward Xue Xue was filled with respect that could not be ignored. The hierarchy of fiends was strict. High-level fiends usually had strong control and deterrence over low-level fiends. This was an inheritance that came from the bloodline. All fiends had to obey it. Hence, although the double-winged black star leopard had heard Jiang Ji-won's command, its respect for higher-level fiends could not be erased. It had only jumped out in a moment of desperation earlier because it was forced by the power of the master-servant contract between Jiang Ji-won and it. However, it was really difficult for it to fight Xue Xue head-on now. Jiang Ji-won was furious. Leopard. The winged black star leopard scratched the ground twice with its claws. Xue Xue glared fiercely at the man and beast opposite her. A cold light flashed across her eyes. In the next moment, it quickly scuttled out. Take the initiative to attack. Their target was the winged black star panther. Back! The double-winged black star leopard spread its wings and was about to fly into the air to fight. However, before it could do anything, there was a flash of light, and Shue was already right in front of it. The winged black star leopard was shocked. He immediately ran in another direction. It was fast. However, Shue was even faster. With a light tap of its toes, it instantly left several afterimages in the air. Several exclamations came from the crowd. Although the double-winged black star leopard's level is lower than the white lion's, its speed is top-notch. Logically speaking, it should have the upper hand in this aspect. How did this happen? In the blink of an eye, Shue was already in front of the winged black star leopard. It raised its claws and slapped down. Paw! The winged black comet panther was unable to react in time, and its head was directly hit. Its vision turned black, and its body fell heavily to the ground uncontrollably. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. Leopard! Jiang Ji-won was shocked and immediately wanted to charge over. However, Shue did not give her the chance. It quickly landed and opened its mouth to bite without hesitation. No! Jiang Ji-won's voice became shrill. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was exceptionally crisp. One of the winged black star leopard's wings had been bitten off from the middle by Shue. Blood splattered everywhere. The black bones were exposed, and one could even see the broken stubble. It was an eerie sight. Jiang Ji-won gasped. She was so agitated by the scene before her that she almost fainted. Her father had personally found this winged black star leopard for her on her 10th birthday. After so many years, she had taken good care of it and was very attached to it. Now that one of its wings had been bitten off, how could she bear it? Shue raised its head. Its icy blue eyes were cold and had a hint of provocation. Its meaning was clear: do you want to continue? The winged black star leopard struggled to get up. Unfortunately, Shue was suppressing it, and it could not move. Jiang Ji-won was shocked and furious. However, she knew that if this continued, it would not end well. She was unwilling to accept this. She clenched her fists, and her nails pierced her palms. Everything that had happened earlier kept replaying in her mind. The six-pole lock was easily torn apart, and the winged black star leopard could not retaliate. I admit defeat. Jiang Ji-won gritted her teeth and spat out these words. The first challenge of the second stage ended just like that. It started naturally, but ended unexpectedly. Before this, everyone thought highly of Jiang Ji-won. However, who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Shue's attacks were clean and direct. It was a one-sided suppression. Even someone as strong as Jiang Ji-won was defeated. After a rough calculation, he realized that he hadn't even been able to hold on for 15 minutes. Hearing her admit defeat, Shue jumped down from the winged black star leopard. It looked down and rubbed its claws against the ground in disdain. The winged black star leopard was such a lowly creature. Its blood would only stain its noble claws. If not for the fact that it wanted to end the battle quickly, it would not have bothered to do this. Jiang Ji-won retreated with the winged black star leopard. Rong Xiu leaned against the throne. His expression was still languid. Next. His voice was low and pleasant. It was light and gentle. However, the expressions of many women changed. Next. Even Jiang Ji-won was in such a state. Wouldn't the others be worse off? They yearned for the position of princess consort, but they had to be alive first. They did not want to lose their lives for nothing. Wouldn't that be too much of a loss? Rong Xiu raised his brows and looked around. Many people lowered their heads. They were obviously unwilling to accept the challenge. 36 respected Elder Ming looked at Chu Luiyue a few times. He could not help but urge her. Didn't you form a contract with a divine beast too? He looked like he was about to pull Chu Luiyue up. Upon hearing this, many people in the palace looked at Chu Luiyue, including Jiang Jiwon. She was treating the winged black star leopard's wounds. When she heard that, she immediately looked up. Divine beast. That Dugyu has one too. She pursed her lips. So what if she has a divine beast? If she goes up, she'll end up like me. Chu Luiyue stood up and walked toward Xue Xue. Finally, she stopped about 10 steps away. She has a divine beast too. I wonder what level it is. She doesn't seem to have any background. Her divine beast's level shouldn't be too high, right? But she knows His Highness the Saint and 36 respected Elder Ming. Maybe, amidst the crowd's discussions, a small red figure appeared on Chu Luiyue's shoulder. It was Dumpling. Then, with a whoosh, Dumpling suddenly spread her wings. See how I'll deal with you today. Xue Xue also seemed to be energized. Roar! The hatred of stealing my master is irreconcilable. Whoever wins will be her fiend. Chu Luiyue. But this Dugyu, the most infuriating thing was that while the two spiritual beasts were exchanging blows, she was standing by the side with a lazy expression, as if she didn't care about this matter at all. Suddenly, Jiang Jiwon was startled, and a guess appeared in her mind. That Dugyu looked so confident. Could it be that she was already certain that he would win? She knew Rong Xiao and 36 respected Elder Ming. Moreover, the attitude of those two towards her was indeed different from that of ordinary people. In the end, Xue Xue was also Rong Xiao's contracted divine beast. If he wanted to, Xue Xue's victory or defeat was still in his hands. Screech! Following Dumpling's clear cry, the two entangled beasts finally separated. Xue Xue's fur was messy, and there were a few bloodstains on its body. Especially its nose, which was directly pecked by Dumpling's sharp beak and was bleeding. It was a miserable sight. Dumpling wasn't any better. Many of its feathers had been plucked off, and there was even a bald patch on its tail. The two stared at each other, panting heavily. It was obvious that they were still not convinced of each other's victory. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this battle was almost a draw, with both sides winning and losing. But this result was already very shocking. There was almost no one else in the entire Yuntian Tower who could fight to a draw with His Highness the Saint's contracted divine beast. Seeing that the two were about to continue fighting, Chu Luiyue finally spoke. Dumpling, come back. Only then did Dumpling retract its wings and return to its original small form, landing on Chu Luiyue's shoulder. Then, it raised its head and glanced at Dumpling very coldly. What's there to be so arrogant about? This master belongs to whoever it belongs to. Xue Xue roared indignantly. Dumpling sneered, then nestled in Chu Luiyue's shoulder, intimately rubbing against her face, and threw a disdainful look at Xue Xue. Pfft, I'm going to piss you off. Xue Xue was angry and couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue pitifully. Ahem. Chu Luiyue coughed. You guys, still want to fight? Humph. Xue Xue turned around resentfully. It was sad. It listlessly returned to Rong Xiao's side and lay down weakly. Everyone was speechless. This was, it admitted defeat. Rong Xiao glanced at it. It didn't seem to have deliberately gone easy on it just now. In that case, Dumpling's strength had increased rapidly, and it had indeed reached the point where it could fight with Xue Xue. As if it had been seen through, Xue Xue simply buried its head. I'm not listening. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and looked away. It seems that Miss Dugu still wins this round. Wait. Before Rong Xiao could finish speaking, he was suddenly interrupted. The person who spoke was Jiang Jiwon, who had left the arena in a sorry state just now. She stood up. Your Highness, there's something I don't understand. Chapter 1077. Then, Chu Liuyue's gaze shifted, and it landed on the bloody winged black star leopard at the side. Miss Jiang's contracted divine beast doesn't seem to have the strength to fight anymore. Although it can't, there's still me. Jiang Jiwan walked forward. The two of them faced each other. As long as you and your divine beast can defeat me, I'll be convinced. As soon as Jiang Ziyuan finished speaking, she closed her eyes. A layer of faint light flickered. Then, a shocking aura erupted from her body. Demigod. Several gasps could be heard from the crowd. She has indeed broken through to the demigod realm like the rumors say. A 22-year-old demigod. She should be a genius second only to His Highness the Holy Sun, right? I heard that she's also a mystic master. She's really outstanding. I wonder what Dugayu's strength is at. Hearing the discussions around her, Chu Luyue tilted her head and glanced at Rongxiu. His strength had indeed reached the demigod realm and might even be higher now. If she wanted to catch up to him, she would have to spend a lot of time and effort. Miss Dugu, please. Jiang Jiwan said. Chu Luyue retracted her gaze and smiled. Then, she reached out and touched the chain around her neck. That was the yuan item that Dugu Mabao gave her to conceal her aura. With a touch, the layer of concealment on her body dissipated. She activated her force and her real aura appeared. There was a moment of dead silence in the main hall. Jiang Jiwan was the first to widen her eyes in shock. A stage 7 warrior. Are you kidding me? This Dugayu, who had always been extremely powerful, in the end, was just a mere rank 7 warrior. She thought that she was at least a stage 9 warrior. Otherwise, how could she be so bold and presumptuous? Chu Luyue didn't seem to notice anything wrong. She smiled and asked, why? What? Is there a problem? This was an admission. Because she was too shocked, Jiang Jiwan couldn't react for a while. She couldn't help but laugh, her eyes filled with absurdity and disbelief. Rank 7 warrior. Are you sure you want to continue fighting me? She only needed one move to finish off a cultivator of this level. Chu Luyue blinked. Wasn't eldest Miss Jiang the one who suggested this? Could it be that she's regretting it? Jiang Jiwan found this ridiculous. Is this Dugayu crazy? Did she know the difference between a rank 7 warrior and a demigod? At this time, the surrounding crowd also came back to their senses. The way they looked at Chu Luyue was speechless. It was as if they were looking at an ignorant clown. A rank 7 warrior dares to be so arrogant. To think that I thought she could fight with eldest young Miss Jiang just now. Tisk. How did a cultivator of this level get in here? In this entire ethereal hall, there shouldn't be any cultivator lower than her, right? The crowd discussed fervently. She knew that she was no match for her, so she sent a divine beast to fight. What a good plan. Unfortunately, this Dugayu was too naive. Divine beasts were very strong, especially the red-tailed phoenix in front of her with an extremely powerful bloodline power. Unfortunately, this was Dugayu's contracted divine beast. The level it could perform was closely related to Dugayu's own strength. A divine beast contracted by a 7th-grade warrior was just a joke. Swoosh. Jiang Jiwan waved her hand, and a blue cloak flew out. That cloak was light and agile, and when it fluttered in the wind, one could vaguely see silver light spots. A shocking pressure spread out from it. Mid-grade divine weapon, wind-calming silk. The immortal water mausoleum indeed has a deep foundation. To casually use a mid-grade divine weapon, this time, the red-tailed phoenix is in danger. Jiang Jiwan's slender waist turned, and at the same time, she waved out the wind-calming silk. Chi! The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Like a blue stream of water, it flew out instantly. Whoosh! Dumpling flapped her wings. A ball of red flames also quickly met the attack. The scorching hot temperature instantly raised the temperature of the entire hall. Chapter 1078. Boom! The red and blue colors collided fiercely. Sparks flew everywhere. However, the calming wind silk did not directly penetrate this terrifying fireball. Instead, the edges were stained with red flames. Sparks spread. Jiang Ji-won was shocked and swung it hard. Light flashed on the calming wind silk. Instantly, it was as if frost was shaken off. Those flames were suppressed and then extinguished. But this was only a small part. The huge fireball in front of her was still like an impassable wall. It blocked the path of the calming wind silk. Jiang Ji-won's heart stirred. Her footsteps crisscrossed, and she quickly left the place and ran in another direction. At the same time, the calming wind silk also changed its position in midair. From the initial direct attack, it changed to entangling the fireball. Soon, half of the fireball was covered by the calming wind silk. Screech! Dumpling let out a clear cry. It flapped its wings and rushed directly toward Jiang Ji-won. A strong wind blew. Jiang Ji-won knew that things were not good. She immediately set up a barrier in front of her, and at the same time, she tiptoed and retreated. Crack! Tuanzi smashed the enchantment with its claws. Jiang Ji-won's chest tightened, and a trace of surprise arose in her heart. That Dugayu was just a rank 7 warrior. How could her contracted divine beast be so powerful? She swung her wrist. The calming wind silk flew toward Dumpling with a cold aura. The moment it was about to approach, several lightning flashed. This was Jiang Ji-won using the power of Tianlei gathered on it. Dugayu had not broken through to the god realm, so her contracted divine beast would definitely not be able to withstand this power. Just as this thought flashed through Jiang Ji-won's mind, she saw the red-tailed phoenix opposite her tear at the calming wind silk without any hesitation. Swish! Dumpling actually cut a hole in the calming wind silk. And those several powers of Tianlei seemed to have no effect on it at all. How is this possible? Jiang Ji-won was shocked. However, she did not know that Dumpling was not born a red-tailed red phoenix. It was only after experiencing the lightning tribulation that it finally broke through its shackles and stepped into this level. Therefore, it did not fear the power of Tianlei. Moreover, although Chu Luyue was not a divine realm master, he had a trace of divine power in his body. With this power, Dumpling would be able to display extraordinary strength. Seeing that this trick wouldn't work, Jiang Ji-won made a prompt decision and pulled the wind-fixing silk in front of her. At the same time, she took a few steps back and stood firm. She closed her eyes, crossed her hands in front of her, and the aura around her soared. A ball of blue origin power gathered in her palm. At the same time, a strange pattern appeared between her brows. It was the totem of the immortal water mausoleum. In an instant, a vast and majestic pressure that seemed to have come from ancient times descended. The crowd was in an uproar. Is she going to use her totem power? I didn't expect this red-tailed red phoenix to be able to force her to this extent. That divine beast is powerful, but after Jiang Ji-won uses this trick, this battle should be over. You have to know that with the support of totem power, a cultivator can display strength that is far beyond their original level. Chu Luyue narrowed her eyes. She did feel a faint threat from Jiang Ji-won. A wave spread from Jiang Ji-won's body. Then, a blue light flew out from the totem between her brows. Bang! The blue light instantly turned into countless light spots, with Jiang Ji-won as the center, spreading in all directions. Wherever the blue light spots passed, the space froze inch by inch. Very quickly, the blue dots of light around her formed a huge sphere. Dumpling was also trapped in it. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched her fists and stared at the scene in front of her. This was totem power. Swoosh. Jiang Jiwon suddenly opened her eyes. Black primordial slash. As soon as she finished speaking, a blue light blade flew out from her palm. Chi! A sharp sound was heard. In the next moment, the blue light blade was already heading straight for Dumpling. Dumpling wanted to break free from the predicament in front of her, but her movements became very slow. Because the totem power that Jiang Jiwon erupted had already helped her form a divine territory, and it had an extremely terrifying pressure. Dumpling was no match for it at all. The light blade was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Dumpling, and it was about to cut off her neck. Jiang Jiwon's lips curled into a smug sneer. So what if there was a divine beast? Her master didn't have the strength and was still vulnerable in the end. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly flew over. It directly passed through the blue divine territory and blocked in front of the red-tailed red phoenix. Boom! The blue light blade was hit by a force and shattered with a bang. Jiang Jiwon suffered a backlash, and her chest shook, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She looked up in shock and anger, only to see a huge black eagle blocking all her attacks. When she saw the other party's appearance, Jiang Jiwon suddenly widened her eyes, and then she couldn't help but exclaim, "The legendary three-eyed eagle." Those shiny black feathers, those sharp and cold vertical pupils, that terrifying aura that made people's hearts turn cold, wasn't this the legendary divine beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle? The other people in the hall were also shocked by this sudden scene. Originally, the battle was going well, and Jiang Jiwon was about to win. Why did a legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly appear? The legendary three-eyed eagle hugged its wings and then suddenly spread them out. Boom! An astonishing pressure spread out. Chapter 1079. Jiang Hitian's expression froze. The hall suddenly quieted down. Countless eyes filled with shock and suspicion turned to Chu Luiyue. What did she say? That legendary three-eyed eagle was also her contracted divine beast. You're lying. Jiang Hitian snapped out of his daze, his first reaction being disbelief. A person can only contract one divine beast, that's impossible, the truth is right before your eyes. If Patriarch Jiang refuses to believe it, then there's nothing I can do. Chu Luiyue raised an eyebrow at the two divine beasts. Do you want one of you to stay, or do you want to attack together? The two of them looked at each other and separated. Then, they surrounded Jiang Ziyuan from the front and the back. It was obvious that they were going to attack together. Chu Luiyue rubbed her forehead and smiled helplessly at Jiang Hitian. Patriarch Jiang, I'm so sorry. You see, both of them have bad tempers. Sometimes I can't control them. Jiang Hitian's eyebrows twitched. What a cunning dugayu. She clearly didn't want to let Jiang Jiwon go, but she pushed the blame onto the two divine beasts. Jiang Hitian's veins bulged. You! What kind of trick did you use? Although he asked this question, Jiang Hitian knew in his heart that these two divine beasts should indeed belong to Dugayu. Both the red-tailed phoenix and the legendary three-eyed eagle were divine beasts with extremely powerful bloodlines. If such existences were not willing, then no one could force them to do anything. Especially when it came to recognizing a master. It should be known that most of these mythological beasts were extremely arrogant. If one were to simply use some violent means to subdue them, they would rather commit suicide than submit to a cultivator that they were unwilling to follow. The fact that she had contracted a red-tailed phoenix was enough to make others envious and shocked. Who knew that she had a legendary three-eyed eagle as well? This was simply inconceivable. But now, Jiang Hitian had no time to think about it. If Patriarch Jiang insists, then there's nothing I can do. We can discuss this matter later, but for now, let's settle the matter of this duel," said Chu Luyue lazily as she looked at the other side. Jiang Jiwan was knocked to the ground and had just barely managed to stand up. Her face and body were covered in messy bloodstains, and her expression was extremely ugly. He stared at Chu Luyue in shock and anger. She had also heard everything that was said earlier clearly. Two divine beasts. What is the origin of this Dugayu? Eldest Miss Jiang, do you admit defeat or continue? Asked Chu Luyue very amiably with a smile. Jiang Jiwan's lips moved slightly. Of course she didn't want to admit defeat. However, there was the legendary three-eyed eagle in front of her and the red-tailed phoenix behind her. All of them were eyeing her covetously. She had no doubt that as long as she said, "continue," these two would attack at the same time. She had already used her totem power, but she still couldn't win, let alone now. Jiang Jiwan clenched her teeth, her lips and teeth filled with a thick bloody smell. She had wanted to use this opportunity to win against Dugayu and snatch back the title of number one, but she didn't expect it to develop into such a situation. She hadn't even officially fought with Dugayu, and she had already lost. In the dead silence, Jiang Jiwan closed her eyes and said word by word, "I admit defeat." Eldest Miss Jiang is so straightforward. Chu Luyue wasn't stingy with his praise, and praised sincerely. Jiang Jiwan's chest was stuffed with anger, and she almost died of suffocation. Digression, continue at 6 p.m. Chapter 1080. Finally, Jiang Hitian couldn't hold himself back anymore. He rushed forward to support Jiang Jiwan and brought her away. "Ziyuan, are you all right?" Jiang Jiwan wiped the blood from the corner of her lips. Of course she wasn't all right. The consort selection test had already gone through 2 rounds, and the champion of both rounds was Dugayu. With such results, even if Dugayu couldn't become the consort, she would at least be able to stay in the Yuntian Tower. Just thinking about how she might have to face that face every day made Jiang Jiwan feel disgusted. If she didn't like Dugayu at the start, she was now filled with disgust. Jiang Hitian hurriedly ordered the heavenly doctor elder who had come with him to take Jiang Ziyuan's pulse. "Old Su, how's Ziyuan?" Jiang Hitian asked worriedly when he saw Old Su's frown. Old Su sighed. "First Missy's life isn't in danger, but she's injured internally. I'm afraid she'll need at least half a month to recover." "How did this happen?" Jiang Hitian was shocked. Ziyuan clearly set up her god domain earlier, and she even had the calming silk to block it. Even though the legendary three-eyed eagle is powerful, it shouldn't have caused such severe injuries. This, Old Su glanced at Jiang Jiwan. First Missy should be more aware of this, that legendary three-eyed eagle is indeed powerful. Jiang Jiwan closed her eyes and retracted her hand. She tried her best to calm down. Even though she was furious, she didn't forget that this was the ethereal hole. Countless people were looking at them from all directions. In fact, it's even stronger than the crimson-tailed phoenix. She recalled everything that had happened earlier, and her heart still trembled. When the legendary three-eyed eagle made its move, she really felt the threat of death looming over her. That shouldn't be. Jiang Hitian was even more confused. Even though the legendary three-eyed eagle is also a divine beast, it shouldn't be stronger than the crimson-tailed phoenix. However, he knew that Jiang Jiwan wouldn't lie about this matter. After a moment of silence, Old Su lowered his voice. "Patriarch, a cultivator can only form a contract with one divine beast. That Dugayu is obviously problematic. Perhaps that legendary three-eyed eagle is hiding something strange." Jiang Hitian furrowed his brows and shook his head. "Forget it. You treat Ziyuan first. We'll talk about the rest later." "Yes." Chu Luyue cupped his hands in the direction of the immortal water mausoleum and smiled. Eldest Miss Jiang, thank you for letting me win. Jiang Ji1 gritted her teeth, but in the end, she did not flare up. Let her be smug for now. Chu Luyue then surveyed her surroundings, raised her brows, and smiled lightly. Is there anyone else who doesn't agree with the current outcome? Everyone can come up and fight, I will accompany you to the end. Dead silence. What a joke. Even Jiang Ji1 had been beaten to such a state. Who would be so blind as to rush forward? Wasn't that just looking for trouble for himself? Two divine beasts. Would an ordinary person be able to bear it? It seems that no one has any objections. Rong Xiu, who was sitting at the head of the table, spoke lazily and calmly. Then the first place of the second round will also be Miss Dugu. Everyone had different expressions, but no one said anything else. Just then, Rong Xiu suddenly stood up. Everyone turned to look at him strangely. Then, they saw the handsome man in a black brocade robe with one hand behind his back, his thin scarlet lips slightly curved. I have only prepared 3 rounds for this consort selection ceremony. Now that Miss Dugu has won 2 of the rounds, there is no need to proceed with the last round. He raised his hand and pointed at the woman in red standing in the distance. The position of consort belongs to her. Everyone was shocked by his words. His Highness the Son of Saint had chosen the consort just like that. There was no third round, no foreshadowing, no warning. It was decided just like that. This was simply catching everyone off guard. Your Highness, you can't. Jiang Hitian stood up instinctively and shouted in a deep voice. The position of consort is extremely honorable. It concerns the prosperity of the Yuntian Tower and all the tribes. How can you make such a rash decision? Rong Xiu's lips curved into a faint smile, but there was no smile in his eyes. In the consort selection ceremony, all the tribes of the Yuntian Tower were invited. Not a single one was left behind. Moreover, the competition was carried out fairly and justly. Everyone saw it clearly and can be considered as witnesses. Now that the results are out, she is first in both rounds. Naturally, it was reasonable for her to be chosen as the princess. Why is it a rash decision when it comes to family head Jiang? Jiang Hitian choked, his heart burning with anxiety. If Dugu was chosen, then what about Ziyuan? He took a deep breath, his face dark. Could it be that His Highness had decided to choose Dugu as the consort from the beginning? Then, what is the point of this round of competition? Dead silence. Only the Jiang family of the Immortal Water Mausoleum would dare to question Rong Xiu like this. Rong Xiu's smile faded, and his eyes narrowed. I did not interfere in the consort selection ceremony from beginning to end. Could it be that I helped her get first place? Jiang Hitian was speechless. That's right, everyone here saw with their own eyes how Dugu won the 2 matches. They had no choice but to accept it. Jiang Hitian clenched his fists. He could see that Rong Xiu was interested in Dugu. Otherwise, he would not have insisted that she participate in the consort selection ceremony. But he had always thought that even if Dugu performed well, Rong Xiu would at most give her the status of a concubine. She was not even qualified to be a concubine. Therefore, he had never taken Dugu seriously. But who would have thought that Rong Xiu would not only choose her, but also give her the position of consort? Where would the Immortal Water Mausoleum put their face? Seeing that this reason could not be used, Jiang Hitian immediately changed it. Your Highness, this woman's background is unknown. Even if you really want to make her your consort, you should first show her background to convince the crowd. As he spoke, he looked at Lin Tianfeng. If I remember correctly, Dugu came with clan head Lin and the others from Cave Heaven Cliff. But she doesn't seem to be from Cave Heaven Cliff. Lin Tianfeng was still immersed in the shock of Rong Xiu directly choosing Chu Luiyue as consort. He did not react for a moment. Lin Qifei's lips moved slightly. Just as he was about to speak, a voice came from behind. She is indeed not from Cave Heaven Cliff. She is an outsider. Lin Qifei's heart skipped a beat. He turned back to look. The person who spoke was Lu Ruhai. At this moment, Lu Ruhai did not seem to notice Lin Qifei's warning look. He suddenly stood up and pointed at Chu Luiyue and the main hall. She is just an ordinary woman who came from the outside world a few days ago. Chu Luiyue looked at Lu Ruhai, narrowed her eyes, and sneered in her heart. She knew that he would not give up so easily. So this was what he was waiting for. The moment the words, outsider, came out, a storm was set off in the main hall. However, Lu Ruhai did not seem to be satisfied. Sensing Chu Luiyue's gaze, he looked over with a cold glint in his eyes. Then, he pointed at Dugu Maobao. Also, she does not have a fiancé. She is already married. She even has a child. Although it was beyond his expectations that the Saint Prince would choose Duguyu as his princess consort, he still hoped for the best for Duguyu. After all, she was Ji Fei's benefactor. If he nodded now, wouldn't he be putting Duguyu to death? Just as he was hesitating, Chu Luiyue spoke first. Patriarch Lin and the fourth young master will of course agree with what you said just now, because in their hearts, this is indeed the case. However, what if I say that from the very beginning, what I said was not true? Chu Luiyue's lips slowly curved into a sly smile. I said that I brought Dabao here to find someone. However, I have never personally admitted that Dabao and I are mother and son, and I have never admitted that the person we are looking for is his father. Patriarch Lin and the fourth young master can also bear witness to this. That's right. Lin Qifei pondered for a moment, then spoke with a serious expression. Miss Dugu has indeed never said these things herself. It's just my and father's speculation. A woman bringing a child to find someone, who else could she be looking for? In fact, it was reasonable for them to think this way. Lu Ruhai was stunned for a moment, then immediately clenched his teeth. If you say it's not, then it's not. What evidence do you have? Then what evidence do you have? Chu Luiyue immediately asked. Lu Ruhai was speechless. This matter had developed to this point, and it seemed to have become a dead knot. Everyone's eyes wandered back and forth between the few of them, not knowing who to believe. After a short silence, a voice came from the side. If Miss Dugu really has nothing to do with that child, why did she go through so much trouble to bring him from the outside world to the divine ruins world? Hearing this, Chu Luiyue looked in the direction of the voice. The one who spoke was Jiang Ji-won, who had just treated her wound. Her pretty and gentle face was now deathly pale, but it made her look even more delicate and pitiful, making her look even more pitiful and unlovable. Also, since Miss Dugu is only a rank 7 warrior, then, how did she successfully pass through the door of the divine ruins world and come here? Her voice had returned to its usual calmness, as if she was not questioning, but simply asking a question. But these two questions hit the nail on the head. It was already very difficult for ordinary cultivators to break in from the outside world. Why did Dugu have to bring a child? How much trouble would that add? Not to mention, with her current realm, it was impossible for her to enter. Everything was full of doubts. Of course it's because I want to. Chu Luiyue said with a smile. Also, as for how I came in. Of course, I came in with my own ability. Could it be that someone specially came to pick me up? Rong Xiu rubbed his nose. Yan Qing felt a chill down her spine and lowered her head. Umo scratched his head in confusion. Was he scolding Master or Yan Qing? But he quickly thought it through. He was still scolding Master Yan Qing was not qualified. Jiang Jiwan felt that Chu Luiyue was simply pestering endlessly. She might as well not have answered these two questions. Wasn't she just running away? Miss Dugu, please answer my question directly. If you can't prove your innocence, then we really have reason to suspect that this child is really yours. A woman with a child wants to be the princess consort. Is she dreaming? Chu Luiyue raised her chin. May I ask, in what way does Debao look like me? Everyone subconsciously sized up the two of them. One had purple hair and purple eyes, while the other had black hair and black eyes. They were really worlds apart. Moreover, the child was extremely beautiful, while Duguyu, isn't it simple? He just looks like his father. Jiang Hitian pressed on. Duguyu, since you admit that you came to Yuntian Tower to look for someone, why don't you find that person now and confront him face to face to see who this child is? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. Are you sure? Jiang Hitian sneered. Why, you don't dare. That's not it. Chu Luiyue rubbed her chin, then turned to Rongxiu. Your Highness, they insist that this is your child. Why don't you come and identify it yourself? Digression, there was another slightly later, around 7 o'clock. Chapter 1082. The ethereal hall fell into a deathly silence. At this moment, the air seemed to have frozen, and even time seemed to have stopped. Everyone doubted whether they had heard wrongly. What did Duguyu say to the Son of God? This child, is him, the person she is looking for, is the Son of God. Rongxiu coughed. If he didn't speak up now, that person would probably make a move. I haven't even gotten married yet, so how can I have a child? It was like a thunderclap. Everyone was stunned, and it took a long time for them to recover from their shock. He admitted it. Did he admit it? Wasn't His Highness saying that he was the man Duguyu was looking for? Her fiancé. Your Highness. Jiang Jiwan could no longer maintain the image of a noble lady. Her face was ghastly pale, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Your Highness, do you know what you are saying? Of course I do. Rongxiu's gaze turned a little colder as he glanced at her. On the other hand, Miss Jiang seems to have forgotten her own identity. Jiang Jiwan's heart clenched in pain, and her face was burning. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to bury herself in. Seeing her in such a difficult position, Jiang Hitian couldn't help but speak up. Your Highness, what do you mean by this? Duguyu, she, the fiancé you spoke of previously is indeed I. Rongxiu interrupted Jiang Hitian's words and spoke frankly. So, I can testify to everything she said earlier. As he spoke, he turned to look at the dumbfounded Lu Ruhai. May I know if I am qualified to be her witness? Lu Ruhai's face turned ghastly pale. How could this be? How could this be? Didn't they say that Duguyu's fiancé was just a lowly guard of the Yuntian Tower? How did he suddenly become the Son of God? But no matter how much he refused to believe it, he knew that this was the truth. His Highness said it himself, how could it be false? He then recalled the series of events that had happened after they had arrived. Regardless of whether it was Yan Qing's respectful and careful attitude, the seats in the first row, or the closeness of 36 respected elder Ming, all of this confirmed this matter. Previously, he only felt that it was strange, but now that he thought about it, everything seemed to have been foreshadowed. Lu Ruhai felt cold all over. He didn't need to think to know what kind of powerful figure he had offended. At this moment, he was filled with regret, and he finally understood why that woman was always so calm and composed. Not only did she have a backer, but it was also the most powerful backer in the entire Yuntian Tower. Lu Ruhai's lips trembled as his aged face trembled violently. However, he was unable to speak a complete sentence. Since the consort selection ceremony has ended and the results are out, then the position of consort belongs to you. Wait. Chapter 1083. The man's deep and clear voice reverberated throughout the entire ethereal hall, clearly reaching everyone's ears. There was complete silence. Jiang Ji-won's already pale face turned even more miserable. Her body swayed, and she nearly fell to the ground. Jiang Hetian hurriedly supported her. Seeing her sad and despondent appearance, he was angry and anxious. He couldn't help but raise his head and shout, "Your Highness, be careful with your words. Are you going to disregard all the tribes of the Yuntian Tower? How can an outsider be the consort?" As long as Rong Xiao still had the slightest bit of rationality left, he wouldn't say such words in public. Everyone, including themselves, had already decided a long time ago that the consort could only be chosen from the immortal water mausoleum. Now that something like this had suddenly happened, what was going on? Where were they supposed to put their faces? Rong Xiao's expression didn't change at all, and his authority was unquestionable. "If I say she can, then she can. Your Highness." Elder Yu Jing clasped his fist with a cold expression. "Are you really going to be so obstinate?" Rong Xiao suddenly chuckled, and his eyebrows shot up. "Over the years, I have been obstinate many times. Are you all still not used to it?" Elder Yu Jing choked. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Rong Xiao's words were definitely not an exaggeration. His identity was very special. Back then, when the clan head and the others found him, he was supposed to be executed. However, 36 revered Elder Ming had risked his life to save him. In addition, his talent and bloodline were simply too powerful, so he barely managed to survive. He had been in the Yuntian Tower for more than a decade. From the lowly bastard who was bullied by others to the current Holy Son, it was clear that he was a shrewd person. Now that the clan head was in seclusion, he was even more domineering than before. And now, even his consort was going to marry an outsider. Indeed, the blood of a lowly person flowed in his bones. However, Elder Yu Jing and the others didn't dare to say such words out loud. The Rong Xiao of today was no longer who he used to be. Just like this consort selection ceremony. It seemed lively, open, and fair, but in fact, he had already chosen that woman. All of this was just a gimmick. It was all for the sake of justifying her ascension. He didn't even care about the gazes of others and openly revealed his intentions. Who could stop this? Your Highness, what you said makes sense. Miss Dugu has indeed passed the consort selection ceremony selection and became number 1. It is only natural for her to obtain the position of consort. Exalted Elder Qinchin, who was standing behind Exalted Elder Yu Jing, suddenly laughed and said amiably. However, you know the rules of the Yuntian Tower. The princess consort had to be someone with the bloodline of the divine ruins world. Otherwise, even if we all agree, she won't be able to pass the sacrificial god temple's test, right? Chu Liuyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. The trial of the sacrificial god temple? She had to be someone with the bloodline of the divine ruins world. Just as she was pondering, Rong Xiao's indifferent and firm voice sounded again. In other words, if she can pass that test, you will all acknowledge her identity. Exalted Elder Qinchin nodded. Of course. Rong Xiao chuckled. Good. Chu Luyue looked at Rong Xiao with a blank expression. Good. What good? She didn't have the bloodline of the divine ruins world. Even if she had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, she shouldn't be able to fool them on such an occasion, right? However, Rong Xiao didn't seem to see her doubt and worry. He strode down with his long legs. He was very tall, and his black brocade robe outlined his waist even more perfectly. His shoulders were broad, his waist was narrow, and his body was tall and slender. Every step he took was light and quick, but there was also an indescribable air of nobility about him. It was as if he had walked out of a landscape painting, noble and elegant, flirtatious and devilish. Chu Liyue stared at him, and for a moment, she was in a trance and subconsciously held her breath. The man in front of her was strange yet familiar. He always wore a white robe, gentle and clean, like a banished immortal. However, today, he only changed into a black robe, but he seemed to be a completely different person. Decisive, cruel, and cold. In the air, she could even smell a faint smell of blood. That was the aura of a person who wandered between life and death all year round, controlling countless lives. He was Prince Rongxiu. He was also the Holy Sun Rongxiu. However, when she looked at his face, she felt that he was still him. Such a gentle look was only for her. He walked over and stretched out his hand. I'll go with you. He didn't call himself I. He said he would go with her. Countless people's eyes followed him, but in his eyes, there was only her. For a moment, Chu Liyue suddenly felt something surging in her heart. She held his hand, it was broad and warm. Good. Jiang Jiwon bit her lip. The smell of rust spread between her lips and teeth, but she didn't feel the slightest pain. At this moment, in her eyes, there were only the two people standing hand in hand. Everyone could see clearly that he took the initiative to reach out his hand first. In front of that woman, he wasn't the high and mighty Holy Sun, he was just a man looking at the woman he loved, his eyes full of joy. He had never looked at her with such eyes. Jiang Hitian saw her expression, sighed in his heart, and comforted her. Ziyuan, don't worry, she is an outsider, and definitely can't pass the test of the sacrificial god temple. Rongxiu's eyes turned cold, and murderous intent surfaced in his eyes. However, Chu Liyue suddenly took the initiative to speak first as she smiled. Thank you for your concern, Patriarch Jiang. I will definitely work hard and not let you down. As she spoke, she even shook Rongxiu's hand and blinked. Her pair of black eyes sparkled brightly. I'll be going then. What was the point of saying so much to these people? Using strength to prove herself was the only way to shut their mouths. Of course, she could also flaunt her affection, but it was more of a supporting role. It was fine for her to use it occasionally, but she wasn't willing to do it too often. The purpose of this was to clarify her sovereignty, not to argue with those people. She didn't want to waste too much time on those people, so it was enough for her to show her sincerity. Seeing her sly and quick-witted appearance, the anger in Rongxiu's heart instantly dissipated, and his noble eyes relaxed. All right. Rongxiu waved his sleeves, and a golden streak of light flew out. The streak of light flew straight from the ethereal hall, forming a bridge that connected to the sacrificial god hall. Chu Liyue leaped up, jumped onto the golden bridge, and went up. She actually went up. Isn't she afraid that she won't be able to detect the slightest bloodline and embarrass herself? Since things have already come to this, does she have a second choice? Indeed. Do you think it's that easy to become the consort of the Yuntian Tower? But she's an outsider. She'll only be courting death if she does that. Seeing Chu Liyue's silhouette gradually disappearing into the distance, quite a few people began whispering among themselves. Most of them didn't think highly of her chances. Even though Chu Liyue had summoned 2 divine beasts earlier, they still didn't think that she would be able to clear this trial. She was indeed powerful, but it was a pity that her birth couldn't be changed. She was born without a bloodline, and she wouldn't be able to do so in her entire life. Unless she made a breakthrough herself and became a god realm expert. Furthermore, even a half-god wouldn't do. She had to be a god realm expert. But how could it be that easy? Putting aside an outsider like her, there were countless cultivators in the divine ruins who were stuck at half-god realm for their entire lives, unable to advance any further. Even until their deaths, they were unable to take that step forward. Furthermore, she was only a rank 7 warrior now. If she wanted to summon the infinite divine sundial and her bloodline power test was at least 5 points, it was just a pipe dream. At this moment, Chu Luyue naturally couldn't hear the discussions of the crowd below. Of course, even if she heard it, she wouldn't care. Everything else was fake. Strength was the real deal. She could cure his illness as an 8th-rank celestial physician. What else was impossible? Chu Luyue frowned. Strange. Logically speaking, there should be no problem. After all, the force in her body was quite strong. Why was the infinite divine dial not reacting at all? She made up her mind and fiercely mobilized the force in her dantian. In an instant, the water droplets seemed to be affected by something and slowly started to spin. Buzz! The infinite divine dial shone brightly. Following the deafening buzzing sound, the golden needle suddenly moved. Click! The needle moved to the 1st position. The crisp sound of the needle moving instantly reverberated between heaven and earth. Everyone who was watching from below was also shocked. It moved. The infinite divine dial moved. She actually has the bloodline power of a god-level expert in her body. I wonder how many points she can reach. Chu Luyue raised her head to look at the needle and let out a sigh of relief. Then, she allowed the force in her body to flow into her palm. At the same time, the needle on the infinite divine dial quickly moved to the 2th position. Then, it quickly jumped to the 3rd position. Gasps could be heard coming from the crowd. How can it be so fast? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.